got me before I could even smoke, ladies and gentlemen. I was getting ready to smoke. I forgot the show was about to start. Welcome to Fat Man Beyond. I'm Kevin Smith.
I am Marc Bernardin.
Hey!
Oh.
It is another fine Monday. We don't generally do the show on a Monday. I was back east, so we couldn't do the show Saturday or Sunday. But we didn't want to miss the precious week of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So me and Mark talked about it with JC, and here we are doing it on Monday. And it's also later than we're used to doing it, so apologies to the folks over in the UK who are like, it's 4 in the fucking morning, mate, or whatever the fuck. Sorry it took us so long. I was preoccupied today doing a Motu Masters of the Universe thing all day long because we're getting ever closer. Next month, Mark, people are going to start seeing the first images from Revelation. I know, very exciting. I've seen the press kit, other surprises that are in store. Like we're getting very, very close. So I was working on that all day long today, and we couldn't start the show to 8. But the point is, kids, the show has started, and there is a goddamn show. Mr. Marc Bernardin, how are you, and what you been up to?
I'm doing well, man. I think what we're doing now is sort of retraining the audience to kind of return back to the way the show used to be, which was Tuesday nights at like 8 o'clock. And so here we're on a Monday at like 8:30, and maybe next week, maybe week after, we'll be back in the cantina doing it live and still beaming into the world. And so this is a nice kind of reminder that the like weekends at 4 are probably going to begin to peel back. I'm good, man. I'm good. I think, I'm trying to think what I did the last time. I saw Godzilla versus Kong finally. Which is ridiculous.
You saw it in the theater, right?
I rented myself a theater and I sat there with like 3 friends and we saw Godzilla v Kong in the movies.
Quick question, JC, Bamfin here real quick. I said quick twice. God, I hate doing that.
Hello.
I would have said quick once. Hello, JC. Just in case you don't have to know for sure, but I can't. On YouTube, I can smoke weed to my heart's content, but Facebook would do what to us?
I don't know. That's a Will Wilkins. Will Wilkins, the one time you were smoking on stream, I got like a flurry of text messages that was like, you can't, Kevin can't, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg.
Which I understand there's a policy, but what would happen? Like, do they fucking throw my account off? Or
they might turn your account off. We don't want that.
Yeah, but I had a real tough day.
Anybody want to buy a fence?
Yeah, I feel like this would be a much cooler show if I can just shake off the shit that I'm carrying. I didn't get a chance to get centered before the show and stuff. And I'm just sitting here going like, I could be antsy about it, or I could ask the question, which I've never asked, which is like, what the fuck would Facebook do?
I mean,
are they gonna tell mom?
I could turn your video off, and you could still talk.
But that goes against my ego. Like, of course I want to be seen. I don't want to not be seen. And I think, to be fair, I might look cooler if I was smoking. People in TV and movies, they always look cooler. So if I'm smoking, I want to be seen, JC.
But you're just smoking clove cigarettes. It's not as if it's anything beyond that.
That's true.
Yes. Yes. Yes, of course.
It's just cloves. It's an actual cigarette.
Every once in a while, like Mark says, a man or a woman needs to just kick back and smoke some cloves. Oh, Will Wilkins just wrote. Will Wilkins just hit us up. Breaking news. He said hold on. It was on my screen, but now I got to read it here. They threatened to shut your Facebook fan page down.
For smoking clove cigarettes?
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like,
all anybody can see is smoke.
And Will just also said, but if those are clove cigarettes, which they are, kids, I'm not a big proponent. I don't smoke tobacco, and weed I'm not very familiar with, but I do enjoy smoking a good clove cigarette now and then, ladies and gentlemen. makes me feel like a trendy hipster. So once we get our program going here, I'm gonna have me a clove cigarette. But before we get going, we have a sponsor. We have 2 sponsors tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That's how lucky we are. That's how blessed Fat Man Beyond is. And our first sponsor of the evening, ladies and gentlemen, you know them, you love them, we love them, because they seem to love us because they keep advertising on our show. There must be way less stinky people out there in the world, kids, because the good folks at Native have once again chosen to back Fat Man Beyond, man. Like not with like some kind words like, oh, I like that show, by letting us advertise for their wonderful brand. I was literally, this is no bullshit, I was just in New York, and I went into a Dwayne Reed because I was picking up some mouthwash, some Listerine and stuff, which sounds dirty when you say it like that, because instantly in my head I'm thinking like people are going like, he was blowing people in New York, wasn't he? That's why he needs Listerine. No, I have poor oral hygiene, so I always buy Listerine wherever I go. So I went in to get some Listerine, and Mark, you know how like the trial size area, like this is all the shit you could put on the airplane and whatnot, little bottles and whatnot. They had beautiful baby Native roll-on deodorants, like so cute, man, that you just like, I like, it would have made me feel 100 pounds heavier if I used it, because it was so small in my tiny hands and off folds of my arm and stuff. But I said, Native has busted through, man. Like, they're out there in the world. When you're in Dwayne Reed in the like 99 cents section of the small trial size, not 99 cents because nobody wants it and shit, but 99 cents because it's like, you need this to travel with, you have absolutely made it. And there they are sitting right next to bottles of Listerine, man. Native, kids, is the deodorant that you need to be putting all over your damn body, man. Like nativedeo.com/fatman. Go there right now as we talk about it. And as we're speaking, use their promo code FATMAN at checkout and get 20% off your first order. That's nativedeo.com/fatman, or use the promo code FATMAN at checkout for 20% off your first order. Mark, tell us about Native.
Native, formulated without aluminium, if you're in the UK.
None of that British aluminium nonsense.
Nope. Parabens or talc. It's vegan, never tested on animals. It's made with ingredients you've heard of, like coconut oil and shea butter. You wear deodorant every day. Shouldn't you be able to understand the ingredients that are in it? Don't you want to know what's in your pits? Native DEO is what that is.
That's like a real philosophical question. I've never thought about that. Do I want to know what's in my pits? You're absolutely right. What am I sticking in my pits here, man? Native DEO, ladies and gentlemen, .com, Native deodorant is something that not only is strong enough for a man, but apparently made for a woman, because my wife took all my Native products. They give us stuff in advance of doing an ad so you could try it out, so you can be like, well, I do like this. Or you could be like, I don't want to do an ad for these folks. And I love their deodorant. I've talked about it many times, man. I love their Christmas time. They did candy cane. My old lady, though, snagged it all, man, and then started buying it in the real world, like off of Amazon and stuff like that. So she became a believer, and she's picky and fucking finicky. I mean, I'm going to date myself, but she's like that Morris the cat from the 70s, man. Just can't make her fucking happy. I guess I can make a more current reference and say Garfield, but even that feels old at this point.
Yeah, like Mikey with Life cereals? Like Mikey likes
Yes. She's the Mikey of this fucking house. You know, I'm like, hey, Jenny, she likes it. But she does. She loves the deodorant as well, man. So like I stopped wearing deodorant at a certain point. I had a girlfriend like in the 90s who was just like, that shit smells false. You be you. And so I stopped wearing it. But like, you know, at a certain point, you be stinky. You need to wear something, man. Native got you covered. You can put this stuff all over your body. Like Mark says, it's vegan as fuck. So you can like spread it on toast if you want. Maybe not, but it's vegan, so you could do it.
If you don't have time to run into Dwayne Reed to get yourself some breath freshener, put some fucking deodorant on your tongue. Your tongue won't stink.
Right up and down, man. Native deodorant, ladies and gentlemen, proud sponsor of Fat Man Beyond, man. There's no risk to try Native deodorant. Free shipping on every order in the U.S. And Native offers 30-day free returns and exchanges in the U.S. What are you waiting for, man? I know you've been listening to us talk about Native for like a year now. Like, are you the last holdout? Are you the only person that Native wants us to do an ad for? You sitting there watching this going like, I don't know. Sounds promising, but, you know, I hear a lot of come-ons from many deodorant companies. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind, kids. You'll never get a more pure offer than you're getting right now, as we tell you right now to go to nativedeo.com/fatman. Make the switch to Native today by going to nativedeo.com/fatman or use the promo code fatman at checkout. You get 20% off your first order. Not only are you going to smell better, you're going to do it for 20% less than the average sucker pays, man. You're ahead of the game because of Fat Man Beyond. That's nativedeo.com/fatman or use the promo code fatman at checkout for 20% off your first order. Native, we thank the good folks at Native for sponsoring Fat Man Beyond.
Start thinking, stop stinking.
There's he's a writer. They should take that.
My Madison Avenue is coming out.
We created it on their clock, so that's worked for hire. So you can't even ask for more money for it.
I cannot.
It'd be silly not to use that. Speaking of silly.
Yes. Godzilla versus Kong.
Let me tell you something. My favorite way to talk about Godzilla versus Kong is when I smoke clove cigarettes when it's going on. So you tell me about the experience, and I'm going to sit here and enjoy a fine clove cigarette while you talk about that.
I will say this. Godzilla versus Kong is maybe the dumbest movie that I really enjoyed in the last year or so. Like, it barely holds together. It doesn't make any sense. Like, things just kind of happen. I sort of described it as the okay, what had happened was movie, where I don't know, there's no connective tissue. It's, okay, so what had happened was Kong was on this island, right? But it wasn't an island. It was actually an enclosure that they keep him on, which is on the same island, but now there's a roof. Why? Don't know. And so, but what they need to do is they need to go to the hollow earth, right? Why? Well, because they need to be there. So what had happened was they put him on a boat. How do you get Kong on a boat? Don't ask these questions. It's not that important. So Kong is on a boat, but Godzilla's after him because Godzilla's not the bad guy. And oh, by the way, Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things and Brian Tyree, Smith, and they're weird podcasters / teenager, they're the new Doc Brown and Marty McFly for the 21st century. And they're just investigating shit for no good reason. So anyway, Godzilla is chasing after the boat that has Kong on it, and then they fight on the boats because they're going to the Antarctica. They got to get to the hole to the hollow earth, right? And so what had happened was, that's the whole movie. It's literally just shit happening, connected maybe by boxcar rail connectors, but not by plot and or character. And the thing that was most disappointing to me was it's a movie made by Legendary, released by Warner Brothers, which are the same people who made Pacific Rim, which seemed to be a movie just waiting to have Godzilla in it, but couldn't for reasons called rights. And so now you get to Godzilla versus Kong, and you get to Mechagodzilla, which seems like the prototype for a Jaeger, and you do not find a way to synthesize this entire universe together and just say this is the origin story of the fucking Jaeger program. That here's where it started. Godzilla blasting a hole through the earth with his radioactive breath is how you open the rift that lets monsters from the Forbidden World or the Hollow Earth Kingdom into them. All of these things could have been one thing, but they were just apparently content to make a really awesome punching giant beast movie and an incredibly bad human people talking movie. And I've seen it twice.
You rented a movie theater to do this as well.
I did.
Correct?
I rented
You
an
weren't
AMC
just
screen.
one of these dilettantes who are I'm a rich man, I'll watch it on HBO Max. You actually went to the theater. An even richer man rented the whole theater. You got that Robert Kirkman money I don't know about, man. That's
Ooh, I like to call it white boy money.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Look, not in my world. What happened when you went to see it in the theater? Is that the first time you saw it there?
Yeah, first time I was there. First time in a theater in more than a year.
When it washed over you, did being in the theater and the sentimentality and nostalgia, we're home again, improve the movie? Did that add to the experience?
So much so. It was less the visuals, and it was more the sound. Kind of no matter what you do at home, you cannot replicate, 50 speakers in a room just finely calibrated to deliver that kind of experience. And a movie like Godzilla versus Kong is built for just like giant rumble and like, you know, sort of spatial awareness with the sound. It was great. Like it was a little emotional. Like it was a little like, I remember this. This is when things were good. And even like shitty movies were improved by being here in the dark with strangers, but there are no strangers because I know everybody.
Right.
Yeah, no, it was lovely. I might do it again. I don't know when. I mean, definitely for Dune, if we're not back just for real by November.
I know somebody who saw Dune and said it was fucking incredible. I said, how long? And they said, over 3 hours. They said, worth every second. They were like, it's unfucking believable. I'm not at liberty to say who said it because I'm not even sure if I should say that they said it, but they, you know, I forget.
Yeah, somebody said that it was great.
Somebody in the know. I know exactly who said it, but I just don't want to out them in case they're like, you fucking idiot. You're supposed to keep that quiet.
You know when I'll go? I'll go for Suicide Squad. That's
yes, to see Starro on the big screen. Excellent fucking call.
Sure.
I would say this flick, like, is probably the one flick in recent memory that like delivered exactly what it was supposed to be.
Yes.
You know, if you don't like it, that's fine. But they literally gave us what we all came to see. And they also didn't make you wait. It's not like they were like, we're going to make you wait till the third act. And then they give you a fight like pretty close right up front in the first, like, felt like half hour. I felt like.
And it's like 90 minutes long. Like that movie gets in and gets out and gives you two really great Kong v Godzilla fights. And then you're like, I don't need more than this. And we're done. Roll credits. Thanks very much.
And it's doing incredibly well. This is, I think it's the highest grossing movie of the pandemic, meaning like worldwide, they're almost at 500 million, if I remember correctly, which is unfucking heard of in this moment in time. Even The Croods, which was the previous box office champ, I don't think has gotten there. So clearly, if we were in a normal world, this would have been $1 billion grosser minimum.
Yeah, but and to that point, clearly the HBO Max experiment didn't really wound this movie's performances at the box office. Was if you're still making $500 million worldwide and pirates have had their way with it since the minute it dropped, like that's not a reason for studios and streamers to find themselves at cross purposes. If you can just use this as marketing for that, or have both.
They have created enough Titan movies now, or at least brought enough Titan characters into these movies where they could do like their own fucking Monster Hub, like fucking channel, man. Like just, it is porn if you love seeing what some folks call kaiju or whatnot. If you love seeing giant monsters beat the shit out of each other, like Legendary's doing the Lord's work with that. I mean, to me, it's like the great irony is, of course, you look at the origin material and it's people in rubber suits, you know, knocking over mini buildings. Now they have to spend ungodly amounts of money, but it's so worth it when you like those fight scenes are absolutely fucking incredible.
Yeah, no, I mean, the best version of those is what we got. Which is saying something given that we've had at least 3 Godzilla movies / Kong movies in the modern CG era. But so often they just hid shit at night. Like, all right, we're fighting at night. You can't really see. Oh, it's raining because it's easier. But,
and remember that first one they did where it was like you saw Godzilla as the doors were closing. You're like, like it was like maybe like 3 minutes of Godzilla. In this, like Kong right up front, Godzilla right up front, first big fight happens in the first half hour. Like it's wonderfully made. Who was the director? Is a kid who made
Adam Wingard, who did The Guest and You're Next, and the most recent Blair Witch movie.
Was it a remake or something?
Yeah, I think so. Like some distant sequel.
Well, give him more.
He's doing Thundercats.
What is it?
He's doing Thundercats next.
Oh, he's the Thundercats guy? Good.
Yeah.
Give him all the money, man. Clearly he knows how to tell a story with big characters with CGI. And he everything was in there that you wanted it to be there. You can't walk out of that movie and be like, well, they could have. It was just like, they did it. They literally did it. And it looked great. And hopefully they'll do it again.
Yeah. I mean, again, none of the human story made sense. Every time a human person opened their mouth, it was nothing but exposition. Literally, I have no idea what any of those characters wanted, to the point where it's like, so you're a podcaster who's trying to reveal the chicanery of this giant corporation, and you're advertising on your podcast that you're going to go into work and steal documents before you go into work and steal those documents. Like, you're the dumbest fucking conspiracy theorist I've ever heard, declaring your intentions. I'm going to be a larcenous fool right now. Come and stop me. I dare you. And then they don't stop him. And they also drilled a hole from Florida to Hong Kong and nobody noticed.
Because just when you start falling into the logic trap of like, what the fuck? Suddenly
it just moves right past.
Ape hits a giant lizard and you're like, we're back on track, kids. Where we need to be. Let me ask you this. This is what occurred to me while watching the movie. Other than like, wow, they're doing it. They're literally doing it. They're just beating the shit out of each other. Well done. Whenever the human stuff kicks in, even as a child, like, I don't give a fuck about the human story. I just want to see the monsters and shit. And I was chastised on Twitter by somebody who was like, the human story is the most important part of all this. Like, that's why these movies are the movies that they are, because it was always meant as a commentary on man's mastery over the atomic bomb. And so I get it. I understand why the humans are essential. That all being said, I still would pay double to watch a 40-minute version of this movie that got rid of all the humans and just did what we want to see, what we come to see. Mm-hmm. Like, to put it in the parlance of 70s and 80s teenage Kev, like, I don't need the articles, Playboy. I'll just, just 4-page spread after 4-page spread. That's what I came here for.
Do you not want to know about the Iran-Contra hearings? Is that not your thing?
No, I don't need the interview. I just want to see.
Ralph Nader has some really interesting things to say in this month's Playboy interview.
He can say them in Newsweek. I just want to see glory shots. But this is what occurred to me while I was watching the movie. The people who play the people in these movies, the humans, like, one of the easiest jobs in movies, man. You're probably out in a week. Like, you're usually in one place talking about the threat. There's very rarely is the threat interacting with you. I can't, like, as somebody who makes flicks, I'm like, you can probably shoot this person out in a week. Like, if they ever call you kids to be in a Godzilla movie, just say yes instantly. Like, doesn't matter what they're paying. You're going to be out in a week because it's all about the monster.
And they're going to pay pretty well. Like fucking Alexander Skarsgård and Millie Bobby Brown and Brian Tyree Henry and like Lance Reddick, who literally had 2 lines. Motherfuckers ain't cheap, and they just paid like their mortgage for the year.
Yeah. In like less time than most actors have to sit around on a CG movie or something like that. Like, go talk to those Avengers. How like, they didn't get days off. They're fucking always working and stuff. But on a King Kong Godzilla movie, I bet you get many days off as the human. And if not, they're just like trying to shoot you out and get you the fuck out of there and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible to make a good Godzilla movie with a good human story. There's a movie called Shin Godzilla, which came out, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago. That's phenomenal. Like, it's amazing. I remember seeing that like a sort of double feature. That and Chernobyl are very much the same story, which is here's ungodly, sort of natural disaster made compoundly worse, which is not a phrase, but by the inefficiency of human bureaucracy. Like, it's a story about red tape and how red tape ultimately lets Godzilla just run rampant throughout Japan. And you're with this one salaryman who's doing his best to convince people, like, guys, if you just listen to me, we could stop everything, and nobody will. And watching people sort of pass the buck and just shift it down the line while Godzilla's metastasizing and evolving, it's heartbreaking because that's exactly what would have happened if Godzilla hits modern Japan. In the same way that Chernobyl is, if one dude just does the right thing and says, hey, maybe we should look at these safety parameters, you don't lose the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And you don't just watch a government implode upon itself. It's fascinating. That said, I could 100% do with the punchy cut of this movie that's 45 minutes long, that is just CG punching CG for a while. I don't need more of this story.
I think that would not be compoundly worse. That would be compoundly better.
It's like a compoundly butter.
Coin a phrase after you coined a phrase. That should be that, you know how like Siskel and Ebert had thumbs up, thumbs down. We can have like our catchphrases, and you know, mine is probably gonna be like, it's awesome because I like everything. Yours can be like compoundly worst. There's your next T-shirt. Never mind, fucking what is it? Be humble, but let motherfuckers know. Just wear compoundly worst.
Like, what does that mean? I'm unclear on that, but I made it up.
You went to a movie theater to watch this movie. God bless you.
Yes.
And we'll probably, it should be buried in the news, but since it's happening right now, this may not matter to the rest of the world, but here in Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, they just announced a few hours ago that the Cinerama Dome and the ArcLight Cinemas, the ArcLight being the premier exhibition, cinematic exhibition anywhere, shy of maybe the best place you can ever see a movie, both in picture quality and sound, is in the Stag screening room at Skywalker Ranch. The next best place you can watch movies was always at an ArcLight, man. Picture perfect presentation. Sound quality was incredible. Black box theater, no distractions. They had ushers come in and introduce the film and whatnot. It was a fantastic experience. And they just announced that that experience is over for good. They're closing the ArcLight and the Cinerama Dome. Now, Cinerama Dome will probably go to some other company and will reopen because it's an icon. They're not getting rid of it. It's not like they're going to knock it down for fucking condos or something.
They actually can't because it's a historic site.
Exactly. So the Cinerama Dome will be back. Question mark right now is what happens to the ArcLight? Like, you know, it's bad enough we're all dealing with the heartbreak of the ArcLight going away forever. But, you know, the first question is, well, who's going to buy it? And if the ArcLight's going away, that's an indication that the business is not strong enough to support one of the strongest exhibitors in the West Coast marketplace. So would somebody else be able to fill that void? Who the fuck could buy the ArcLight and run it? And if they did that,
I was just going to say that, you know, there's 100% a section of the business that is both yearning for legitimacy and has nothing but money to spend. And it's probably somebody like Amazon or Netflix.
I thought you were going to say the porn community. You're right. They've been waiting for their moment. Like this theater, this is legitimacy. You're right. You're absolutely right. It could be something like, well, Netflix bought the Egyptian theater out here. So they're in the theater buying business.
Yeah. And so they would get, you know, the 3 or 4 Southern California locations, plus the location that's in New York. And I think there was one they just opened in Chicago, perhaps. And so it wasn't just here, and it's not like a vast proliferation of a chain, but it's enough to be like, hey, you know what? Like, if we're going to own the best theaters in the world, we can do that.
And they could keep the name too. It could be alliterative. Amazon's ArcLight, man.
Yeah. But, you know, and I think that like the movie business is on its way back. I think once the vaccination levels continue to rise and once people begin to feel comfortable leaving the house, clearly Godzilla versus Kong is showing that like worldwide was huge, but even domestically, the movie made something like $50 million since its release, which is nothing to sneeze at. And so it's coming back, but a year of not being able to admit people just had companies in the red to a degree that they could not come back from it. You know, I think, what was it? There, let me see. The Culver City location owed as much as $181,000 due in full to the collections agency. And it's hard to imagine a theater being able to make that much money back to be able to reopen, let alone to just carry that debt and slowly chip it down. Like it's a lot to shoulder.
That's less than Scum and Villainy owes, by the way, in rent. The ArcLight movie theater owes less in rent in Culver City than Scum and Villainy owes in back rent.
Are you kidding me? Is that how much rent you guys are supposed? Like what?
12 months of rent. $250,000.
I mean,
like, what's wrong with these guys?
yeah. How, if you can make it work, how come the arc light's folding?
Probably because our landlords haven't pushed on us yet.
Mm.
Or
Also,
they're just like, it's not worth the fight for them. They'll just fold ArcLight. They'll open a new company called ArcLight 2 and then just get it at COVID rent prices because they probably were on a lease that was way more expensive when the economy was more up.
Mm.
But yeah, it's rough out there unless you're a landlord, and then business is good.
Yeah. So, and it's not just ArcLight; it's also Pacific Theaters, which was a larger, more sort of widespread chain. Because Pacific owned ArcLight.
Did they really? The people that own the Grove?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the Grove is going down.
So both the Pacific at the Grove, the theater, and all the ArcLight theaters are closing.
Yeah. No, I mean, somebody will swoop in to some of these high traffic, like the Hollywood ArcLight will reopen as a theater at some point, probably within the next 6 months, because somebody will say there's money to be made here. It was the highest grossing of the ArcLight locations. We can make a thing happen here. Somebody will move into the Cinerama Dome and make that work. Somebody will move a theater into the Grove and make that work. But it won't be ArcLight necessarily. Some of the other ArcLight locations will probably fade away or show up in some other iteration. But it is huge for LA and Southern California movie going, and a bellwether, especially after the Alamo Draft House declared bankruptcy, and they still haven't yet sort of declared, at least in LA, when their theater is going to reopen. So it's rough out there for specialty movie theaters. Chains can handle it. AMC is coming back, Cinemark is coming back, but yeah, man, it's a very tenuous time.
It is. It's a bummer because I saw many wonderful movie experiences I had in the ArcLight. They built a new model, and a lot of people copied that model around the world and stuff. But they were kind of first out the gate to do what they did. I would say, I wasn't prepared for them to go away forever. I thought they'd be back as soon as we opened up and whatnot. But for everything they ever did for me and mine, I took my kid, I've lived out here since the theater opened. I was there the first week that the ArcLight opened up. So most of the movies I took my kid to see, I took her to see at the ArcLight and whatnot. And so, it's a whole section of not just my life, but her life too, that's kind of going to now go away and stuff. But we have the wonderful memories of the movies we saw there and all the time we spent there. So to the good folks at ArcLight and Pacific, because I enjoyed going to the Grove as well. We offer our condolences, and we also give you a historical Jeff's kiss. Unbelievable. Can't believe we will see the end of the ArcLight in our lifetime. That's nuts. I thought it would outlive at least me. Maybe not you, but definitely. All right. So all that bad news, Mark, we should get to the good news. And the good news always comes in the way lately of one of these Disney Plus shows. They crushed it with WandaVision, Marvel. And now Marvel is crushing it again with the 4th episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in which we ended with one of the most brutal, iconic, memorable images Marvel has ever committed to their screen. Spoilers, kids, if you haven't seen it yet, but come on, it's Monday. How the fuck have you not seen it? What the fuck were you doing with your weekend other than watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier? John Walker, Captain America, holding the bloody shield, the very shield that he used to kill a man who just earlier had talked about what Captain America meant to him, was a game-changing moment that made me think one of two things is going to happen. If it's anything like the comics, eventually Sam will be like, you know what? I am Captain America, and we get a new Captain America in the way of Sam. But right now, man, that shield is so tainted. There's a chance where they're just like, look, we're getting rid of this. Like, we had Captain America, and he'll always live in our hearts, but going forward, he's not going to be a part of this Marvel Matrix. Do you think that's possible?
I don't, but I think it'll be more of a struggle than it might have been before for Sam. You know, like, and it's the thing that I've been longing for, especially in this episode, which I like this episode. This episode does a lot of really fun things, a lot of interesting things. But I keep longing for Sam specifically to have more of a thrust and a drive than he does now, which just seems to be, I got to find these flag smasher people, you know, and Zemo should probably go back to jail. That'd be cool, right? You know, like I kind of want him to be slightly more engaged with what seemed to be the core of the show, which was, can a black man be Captain America? And he doesn't seem preoccupied with that at all. Other characters are. Like, there's lots of, like, when you talk to his sister, when Carly calls his sister, and she's like, you know, does you know, how do you feel about Captain America? And she's like, my world doesn't matter to America. Why should I care about its mascot? You know, and I'm like, like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, you know, what the government does to black and brown people in the name of America, you know, and we see the sacrifice of Battlestar, you know, which is horrific to watch, but it's like, okay, it's just another black dude sort of cut down in service of a mission and a quest that is not his. You know, the desire for super soldierdom, the desire for power, the desire for all of that, like, the people who usually fall by the wayside don't look like John Walker. And so engaging with stuff like that on the perimeter is really fascinating. But it's, what does Sam and Bucky want, and how does it relate to the main threat and the main quest? I'm still squishy on. You know, like, I'm here for the Dora Milaje, just like showing people some shit. And, like, you know, the very definition of fuck around and find out is go ahead and touch a door on the shoulder and see what happens, Captain America. But yeah, no, I'm here for it, but I'm starting to get a little impatient with it. And that's weird to say, given that we're four episodes into a 6-episode run.
Yeah, there's only 2 left at this point.
There's only 2 left.
That's why I'm wondering if, like, you know, even if you're doing an hour piece for those episodes, that's 2 hours for Sam to be like, you know what? I am Captain America. There's a chance that he don't pick up the shield or the outfit by the end of this show. Once again, they're doing a good job of keeping us guessing. I loved this episode because it was Baron Zemo being Baron Zemo. Like, you know, he's deceptive as fuck. He engineered another civil war, essentially, and then fucking ducked out into the bathroom and hid in the sewer. Like, he's fast becoming my favorite Marvel villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, and because they get to spend more time with him than generally they get to spend with most villains. Mm-hmm. You know, in most movies, you meet the villain and find out their arc, and then they beat the villain and then they're gone. But here we get to hang out with Zemo for a while. I'm liking this Zemo so much, like, it didn't bother me that he didn't put the mask on this week. You know,
no Zemo watch.
Now it's just, you know, it's Baron watch. I'll just watch him be the Baron himself. He don't even have to pull on the fucking mask. I saw an interesting theory on Twitter. Somebody said under that mask is a flag smasher mask.
Ooh.
Because they were like, when he picked it up from the car, it had a form to it that kind of resembled the flag smasher form. I was like, that's very interesting. I never would have connected those two. But Daniel Bruhl is just fucking killing it, man. Like, just chewing the scenery, living his best life, being fucking Baron Zemo.
Yeah. And, you know, the most evil thing he did this week was try to convince people that Turkish Delight is a candy you should eat. And that shit is just like chewing on petroleum. Like, it's the worst. I'm sorry, people who like Turkish Delight, but it'll just pull your fucking molars out. It's like, come here, kid. Would you like some of the worst candy ever made? Tell me your secrets.
I don't want to come off as like an ugly American, but it just always occurs to me as like, a far, far Eastern European candy where it's like they don't know how good a Kit Kat is or Reese's Pieces. Like if you think this is candy, it's like, oh, come here. Let me fill you with diabetes full of shit.
It's like a candy made from people who didn't have easy access to sugar.
Yeah. And you see the kids scrambling for the snacks. It's like, kids, if you think this shit's good, oh my God, get out of here.
I got a Peep over here. Yeah. And Peeps are the worst fucking candy ever, but that's light years better than Turkish Delight.
How creepy was it hearing him sing Baba Black Sheep?
Yeah, better, however, than Ring Around the Boat Rosie, which is the darkest fucking nursery rhyme.
Excellent point. Anthony Mackie is still doing a wonderful job, even though, like you said, perhaps he could use a little more motivation. I don't bump into that at all. You know me. I'm just like, it's all fucking good. And it really was. This time around, like episode 3, episode 1 and 2, gigantic fuck off. We're off fighting on a truck or we're fighting in helicopters, action sequences. 3, a lot of close-in fighting. Action, but not big, expensive action sequences. A lot of fight scenes.
Sam didn't put the wings on in 3.
This is the first episode that Sam puts the wings on since 2. But did you notice how limited it was?
He didn't do much flying. No,
he went up and then he crashes through a window. But that was about it. He uses the jet to fire out one of the enemies and shit. But you could see the we got to start big, man. Spend all that money up front. Then 4, 3 and 4, just keep it Daredevil good, and then 5 and 6, we're gonna blow the roof off this bad boy. Like you can tell, it's escalating yet again. But you can. It was. I was glad that he put the wings back on because I was like, all right.
Yeah. I also, my favorite moment I think was the look on the astonishment on Bucky's face when the Dora did the fucking cheat code on his arm. And he's like, but this was mine. He's like, not really. This was a lease at best. And we can always take it back when we want.
He had the look on his face when fucking, the bride did the fucking finger punch into his heart, and Kill Bill and shit, where he was like, that's a thing? You could do that? I loved when fucking he was like, did you know they could do that? And he was like, no. And he put it back on and he did that Terminator thing where he ratchets it back and shit like that. It was so fucking cool. Sebastian Stan doing a wonderful job, man. Still finding cool ways to play it. And I loved that they took him back to Wakanda. Mm-hmm. That we got I felt that was, I know it's that they're in Titan around fire and stuff like that, but I was like, that's money, man. Fucking bringing you money, not just money, it costs money to shoot the scene, but also money that they're bringing Wakanda into it. And we knew they were about to based on the final scene from episode 3. But as you said before, we got to see, the Dora Milaje. How do you say it again? Dora
Milaje.
Milaje in action, fighting Captain America and Battlestar, and also Bucky and Falcon as well.
Yeah, and 3 women just destroyed 4 superheroes. And they didn't even have the superpowers.
So awesome. He sounded like a broken child. They weren't even super soldiers.
I'm the worst Captain America ever.
Sharon Carter pops in to remind us that she's
totally the power broker.
Yes. That's what it's starting to feel like, right?
I mean, it's only because, let's pretend this is a fucking procedural show. The bad guy, you've met the bad guy before you reveal that to be the bad guy. And it's either got to be Zemo or Sharon. It's not going to be some dude we've never met before.
Right.
So, kind of probably. Yeah. Yeah, especially once there's a line where she tells Sam that she's going to task a satellite. She still has access to a couple of satellites, and then Carly somehow knows that Sam's sister has a boat that's on a dock, and how would she know that unless somebody's feeding her satellite footage of where Sam lives? And who's got access to a satellite? I wonder.
Carly Morgenthau, is that how they say her name? Had a really good scene with Anthony Mackie where they were kind of all right, let's have the talk. And then all of a sudden, fucking Captain America busts in and ruins shit and whatnot. That was a really good scene. I like that actress. I think she's doing a great job.
Yeah, no, she was really good. I remember seeing her in Solo. She was the Enfys Nest in Solo.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't put that together.
Yeah, no, I like her.
She's doing a great job. And what's his name? Why is it Wyatt Russell?
Yes.
Kurt's doing a great job at making you despise fucking John Walker, Captain America, and for no good reason. Not like, you know, he's a fucking villain. Although at the end of this episode, we saw his true colors. Battlestar Lamar made reference to it, calling back the words of Erskine by saying like, well, the serum just makes you more of what's already there, you know. But it was also the kind of Jiminy Cricket on John Walker's shoulder being like, look, you're the guy that fucking did this and did this. You know what to do in the heat of battle without super soldier serum, you know, like reminding him like, you don't need that shit. Like you got this fucking shield and this helmet, not because they pumped you full of juice, but because like in the field, you were this, that, or the other thing. And you could tell like, you know, they're building toward like, it ain't going to be enough for him. Well, and then him getting his ass kicked by the Wakandans, which was awesome, led him to that place of like, I'll never be powerful enough. And so when Zemo smashes all the super soldier serums, which is like completely on brand and absolutely in character, that one off to the side, like as soon as he comes running into the room, I was like, no. And as soon as he picked it up, I was like, yes, they're doing it. They're going full U.S. agent shit. It's you know, I've been reading that the poor kid, fucking Goldie Hawn's kid, Kurt Russell's kid, they're beating him up because he's doing such a good job. People are like, I fucking hate him, but they hate the character, but he's getting the fucking hate for it.
It's like they forgot how acting works. Suddenly, it's like, did you forget the last like 100 years of drama where like a dude is playing another person and it's not his actual thing?
And it's like what? So fucking Josh Brolin just gets away with it because he don't look like he does in real life because he looked like Thanos and shit. So weird that they're like, I hate this guy. It's like, well, yeah, you're supposed to maybe, I don't know about hate him, but he's not the good guy, and you're welcome to feel like he ain't my fucking Captain America. That's kind of the point of the story and shit. But like hating the actor for fucking playing the part, it's like he didn't even write it. The dude was just like, look, I'm just doing the lines they want me to do. Blame Kevin Feige, for heaven's sake. But you must be good at your job, man. It's a high praise if like people are like literally hating on your ass.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that for him, you know, I remember reading the stories of the actor who played James Gumb in Silence of the Lambs, who like forever and always was James Gumb whenever he would go out into the world. Like, oh, it's like Buffalo Bill. It's like, no, I'm just an actor, man. I was on Psych for like 8 years. It's like just a regular police captain. I'm just a guy. Like, no, man, you fucking Buffalo Bill,
like,
man.
No. It puts the lotion on its skin and puts it in the basket, or it gets the hose again. He's like, oh,
God damn it. I'd fuck me. No, all I want is a Big Mac, dude. I don't need. So yes, Wyatt, I hope that people remember how sort of performance works and leave that boy alone.
Yeah, don't James Gumb this guy, for heaven's sakes. Don't just because a guy in a movie is like, oh wait, is she a great big fat person? Doesn't mean you get to hate him in real life. He got paid to say those words.
Yes, handsomely.
2 episodes left. Where's this fucker going, Mark?
I don't know. I'm hoping that because the thing we should be feeling by this episode, and granted, this is the according to Hoyle kind of structural math of story, this should be Sam and Bucky's lowest moment, right? Like we're 4 episodes of 6, we're at the end of the second act, all should feel lost, and it doesn't. So it seems as if they've got to lose something major next episode, and then find a way to kind of claim it back by the finale. Whether that looks like Sam keeping the shield finally, whether it looks like Sam returning the shield to Wakanda, which it seemed as if the Dora 100% could have done that if they wanted to.
They could have walked out. Instead, she was like, leave it.
Yes, we don't need that. It's tainted. They painted it funny. we don't want it this color.
Yeah, color's terrible.
Everybody sort of wants him to want the shield, and to want it for the right reasons, not just because it'll end up in the hands of the wrong Captain America, but because he might have the chance to be the right Captain America. And so it feels as if the last 2 episodes need to get Sam to a place where he believes that, where he believes that he can do the right thing, and he can do more of the right thing by holding the shield than he can without it.
I mean, I like they're so good at their storytelling, in as much as like they have stopped just doing sequels and they've started just world building like crazy. Whereas, at the end of fucking Spider-Man Far From Home, I'm like, oh yeah, he's gonna go to high school next year. The prom is probably a thing and everything. And then all of a sudden they're like, fuck no, his secret's out and everything's fucking different. Even with Endgame, we wipe out half the planet, then we bring them back. But now in these shows, it's like we show you perhaps, there's difficulties regarding that. They're not afraid to like move the ball down the field. Like they're not holding on to past glory and shit like that. So I don't know, like I watched the last scene of this episode and him holding that bloody shield. I was like, that's a very graphic image, like, and one that will be kind of burned in our memory for a long time to come. Is this their way of just being like, we're moving away from that? Like the shield ain't going to be a part of this thing anymore. They're like, hey, Tony Stark ain't a part of this thing anymore. So maybe the shield ain't a part of this thing anymore. And, we all assume that because it's Marvel and because it's Cap and because the shield and it's like, oh, they'll never get rid of that. But they have shown a willingness to upend the universe, to tell their story, push it further. Like, it's not about what comforts us. It's all about like, look, we're going to tell this story and we're going to go in this direction. So I ain't calling it. I don't know for a fact, but as I watched that last scene, I was like, this may be them distancing themselves from it for good, because that's a tough image to fucking erase. Like, it's going to take more than 2 episodes to erase that bloody shield from not just, the minds of the folks within the world, as we saw a bunch of people taking pictures and stuff like that, but just the Marvel fan base as well. They're really going out of their way to make us think about this symbol. And I wonder if in the next 2 episodes, they're just going to be like, shield's gone. They can always bring it back somewhere down the road. But I think we're all expecting, like, because they did it in the comics, that Sam will just become the new Captain America. But maybe this is about how there is no new Captain America. Maybe, it's like that happened once. It was special. Just like fucking Zemo, they was talking about, like, people get this shit and fucking it turns them into, monsters and stuff. And they're like, but not Steve Rogers. And he was like, touche. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe the point is there won't ever be another Steve Rogers. And does, Sam even need to be Captain America? He's the fucking Falcon. He's got his own thing going on. And maybe the idea is, as they show the tainted legacy and now, like, the shield, what it stands for is not what it used to stand for. Now there's a image of that shield that's going to be very hard to erase from the public consciousness. Perhaps they just leave it behind and just move forward telling different stories. Like,
I hope you're right. I hope you're right for lots of reasons, because I think that's great story and great fodder for more story going forward. But it would be surprising. And I think that the thing that I've been missing in the last couple of episodes is legit surprise. It's like, I knew that John Walker was going to go dark. Like they've been forecasting that since the very beginning. I knew Zemo was going to betray them because he's fucking Zemo, and that's what he's going to do. I knew that Sam would not be able to talk Carly down because John would do something stupid. Like, there's these things that you can kind of see coming down the road that, like, yeah, no, I get it and I understand it, but give me the thing that I didn't see coming. And nobody being Captain America is not the thing that I saw it coming. Like, I saw somebody figuring it out, be it that Sam decides to do it against his better judgment, be it, the government decides, like, fine, okay, it can be Bucky because Sam doesn't want it. I'm not sure, but something that we can't see coming 100 miles away would be fascinating. And so I hope you're right.
In chat, Spider-Mensch said, "You've watched too much Snyder. That's way too cynical." they'll redeem it. This is a cat that's like, don't fuck with the shield, man. Like, that's dark. They'll bring it back. They're gonna clean it up. They'll get the blood off that shield. Don't you worry. A stark image. You know, as a storyteller, I was both thrilled and jealous, where I'm like, that never would have occurred to me. What a powerful, and shot low too. That high hero angle up at him. And he just cuffed, you know, just as per usual, took the shield and put it right on his arm and just fucking stood there like, ooh, some dark shit, man. Dark way to end. People keep pointing out in chat though, that, hey, I saw in the trailer that Sam and Bucky at one point have the shield. Like, we've seen him throw the shield in many of the trailers. Doesn't necessarily mean that he becomes Captain America. Some other folks in chat have suggested that they melt the shield, like Hilo here says, melt the shield, turn half into a new arm for Bucky, and then the other half into new wings for Falcon, which is a really interesting idea. I doubt they're going to do that, but that's not dark, as that other guy said. Like, hey man, that's Snyder. That's kind of Snyder hopeful right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in talking about things that are surprising, talking about the desire for story we couldn't see coming, it is worth talking about the origin of the Winter Soldier himself, because nobody could have seen that coming, given that Bucky had been dead, and like dead, like dead for real dead. But there was one comic book writer who thought to himself, but what if he's not dead? And we just happened to be lucky enough to have that gentleman as our guest, surprise guest on tonight's podcast. Welcome aboard, Mr. Ed Brubaker. Hey!
Ed!
Unmute yourself.
Oh, take yourself off mute, my friend.
So embarrassed. I've been in clove cigarette mode for a while.
Aren't we all? Kids, nothing wrong with a clove cigarette now and then.
I was here on clove cigarette night and I enjoy it.
Ed, we'll talk about Winter Soldier in a second. But even whether you're watching the show or not watching the show at the moment, me and Mark obviously obsessively watch every episode as a drop.
Oh yeah.
You must be familiar with the fact that this week Disney Plus released a 1 hour like compilation of Baron Zemo dancing. Based on the demand of the audience. Not since the Snyder Cut has an audience demanded something and gotten it that fucking quickly. This took even quicker than the Snyder Cut. Bunch of fans, Daniel Bruhl had done an interview where he was like, we did a lot of dancing. There's like an hour of me dancing, a lot of takes and stuff. And so fans were like, we demand the fucking Zemo cut.
I saw that. I was like, what is that?
They delivered it. They delivered a 1 hour like cut of him dancing. And it was a lot of repetitive shots and shit, but you could sit there and watch it over and over again. Like, I appreciated as a fan how they leaned into it, where they were like, what do the fans want? Fuck it. Give them an hour Zemo dance party.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, listening to you guys talk about the show was kind of amazing because I haven't been keeping up with it. And I'm listening to you guys and I'm like, it sounds really good. Like, it sounds like they're doing a really good job.
How do you not keep up with it? For me, that would be like, well, my daughter Harley, once she went to work on, so I just stopped paying attention to her. How do you watch your kid head into another medium? Because Winter Soldier is your kid. There was no Winter Soldier before you. Let's take it to this moment. Before we talk about what's it feel like to watch that, do you remember the moment you came up with the name?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's the whole Bucky thing is crazy for me. I was like, Bucky was always my favorite character because I was a military brat, just like Bucky. Like my dad was in naval intelligence and I was born in the Bethesda Naval Hospital and lived in Virginia near like the CIA headquarters, and then started school in Gitmo actually, which was like, there's like 3 neighborhoods of officers' families that live in Gitmo. And that's where I discovered like comic books. Was at the
wait, you lived at Gitmo?
Yeah, before 9/11, Gitmo was just a naval base.
Or like in Few Good Men.
Yeah, exactly.
Wall. You need me on that wall.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth. Yeah, no, I lived on Radio Point, which was where the naval officers' families lived, and there was another place where the Marine officers' families lived. And I started school there. We lived there from like age 4 to like age 7 for me. And I would just walk down the hill to the PX and buy comics. And I thought I was buying like this week's comics, not realizing that when you live on the PX, like whatever you're seeing, like I would wake up and turn on the TV and it would be Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. And I would think, oh, these guys are amazing. It's 72. like I thought that was, and that's where I saw like the Marvel cartoons. And I think I saw the Captain America Marvel cartoon from the 60s where it's just adapted from the comics.
Where when Bucky, Captain America throws his mighty shield.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but there's that scene where Bucky is like the military brat who discovers that Steve Rogers is Captain America. He's like, oh, you got to make me your sidekick. And so Bucky was always my favorite character because I was a Navy brat, and it just seemed like, I just had that connection with him of like being part of the military as a kid. And so when I started buying comics, like I'd go to the PX and they would have comics from like 5 years earlier. So like one of the first comics I ever bought with my own money was it's Cap 156, I think, where it's like the Captain America from the 50s who's got his own crazy Bucky. They like predate John Walker, basically. They were like they took the super soldier serum and they got facial changes. It was all just a big retcon to explain why Captain America and Bucky were still in comics in the 50s. But it was like these two Captain Americas fighting on the cover, and one was the real Steve Rogers and one was this guy who was like his biggest fan who just like went twisted and became like a racist. And it was this really intense story to be reading at like age 5. And so like as a kid though, like I had every issue of Captain America that I could get, and it started at issue 100 like the Marvel ones did. And so I for some reason assumed that back during World War II when they were publishing it, they did issues 1 through 99, and in issue 99 Bucky got blown up by Zemo. Like I thought there was a real comic for that. And when we moved to San Diego when I was like 7, I went to Comic-Con. This is like the early 70s, mid 70s, when it was still at the El Cortez Hotel. And I remember walking around the dealer's floor. This was when it was like just dealers and comic book people, and like Jim Steranko and Bob Kane would be giving like lectures about how to draw Batman or Captain America or whatever. And I looked at all these dealers tables. I was looking for issue 99 of Captain America because I wanted to get the issue where Bucky died. Because I had read all these, Avengers issues. I'd read all these modern Captain America issues where Steve's always remembering how Bucky died. And I was like, I want that actual issue. Because I had the issue where Gwen Stacy died. I had a reprint of the issue where Uncle Ben died. These were all things that really happened. And I remember asking this dealer when he saw that I was getting disappointed when I was looking through the Captain America section, he's like, what are you looking for? I'm like, I want issue 99 where Bucky dies. And this guy just started laughing at me. I was like a 8-year-old or 9-year-old kid. And he's like, kid, there's no issue 99. Stan Lee just didn't want to have a sidekick, so he got rid of him. And Jack Kirby was like, cool, whatever. And I was like, they can't do that.
I was following that story.
Yeah, I was like, this is bullshit. My whole life is predicated on this being canon. And so even at age 9 or 10, I started thinking about that. And I thought, well, if I ever get a chance to write this comic, I'm bringing this character back. Because as far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen in the comic. I can change it if I want. And so it was like a thing I thought about on and off throughout my whole life, because I was always like writing and drawing my own comics as a kid. And then when I actually started doing comics, I'd totally gotten away from superhero comics and was doing like independent comics. And, you and I both worked with Bob Schreck in the 90s.
Bernardin, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, Bob was one of the people who gave me my first break and brought me in to work on Batman when he was over there, and you were working on Batman stuff through him too. But I had moved away from that until I realized, hey, I'd actually like to make a living. And then I went back and started reading like what people were doing in the industry. I'm like, oh, comics, even superhero comics have completely evolved post Watchmen into these really kind of interesting, long drawn out stories. And so I was doing a bunch of stuff at DC, and Brian Bendis was one of my oldest friends. We started out in independent comics together, and he was, doing everything at Marvel. And he called me up, and he knew my DC contract had expired. And he said, what do you want to do at Marvel? And I said, well, the only two characters I would really want to do is Iron Fist and Captain America. And I know they just hired someone new on Captain America, so I'm never going to get that job. And he's like, oh, actually, they just fired that guy, and they're looking for someone, and that's what they want to offer you. And I was like, oh, well, they're never going to do what I want to do with it. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to bring Bucky back as like a bad guy and, make it like a big tragedy. And he's like, well, conveniently, we just had a summit 2 weeks ago where Axel and Joe and Tom Brevoort all screamed at each other about bringing Bucky back. And so they're totally open to it. And he's like, so, it's all about like what pitch you've got for it. And then Joe called me the next day and was like, so, Brian says you want to bring Bucky back, which is great because that's what we were going to ask you to do. And I was like, this is insane, first off, because I learned more later about this, but like everybody who wrote Captain America must have wanted to bring Bucky back at some point. There's so many fake times he came back, like, oh, it's the clone from the 50s, and he becomes Nomad.
Was it? Yeah, Nomad. Like,
Nomad was the one from the 50s.
Nomad was like the Bucky grown up and come back.
Yeah, but they forgot to give him the Vita rays, so he went insane.
What happened to him eventually?
They turned him into Nomad. I killed him in my Captain America run because I couldn't have two guys looking like Bucky running around.
So in your run, who was he? He was not really Bucky?
Nomad was not Bucky, actually. Nomad was a guy who wanted to be Bucky and had facial recognition, had his face changed. He was the Bucky of the 50s in the Marvel canon.
Wow.
And I had to do like a fill-in issue, and so I just decided to do the death of Nomad because I thought that would be really shocking. Winter Soldier actually kills him in the comic. So Joe calls me the next day. Joe Quesada, your artist on Daredevil, calls me the next day after Brian did, and is basically like, so what's the pitch for bringing Bucky back? And I gave him like the gist of an idea, and he said, look, you're going to have to convince Tom Brevoort. If we can get Brevoort on board, then we'll be able to actually do this. And I just thought, this is insane. Like, this is a thing everybody has wanted to do. And I have arrived at Marvel at the time when there are people there who are actually willing to do it because they've done everything else with Captain America you could possibly do at this point. And I wanted to do the book more of like a espionage thing. Like 24 was really big at the time. Mm-hmm. And I had grown up in a military family. My dad's military intelligence. My uncle was in the CIA. And so I'd been reading like James Bond and John le Carré books like my whole life. And I wanted to try and take that and bring it to that kind of superhero thing. I was looking at what like Hitch and Miller were doing and like the Ultimates and the widescreen stuff. And I got lucky enough, like I asked for Steve Epting because I'd seen a bunch of covers he was doing. And I thought, could we get this guy? Because he could make this stuff feel real. And so that was working out. And then I just had to pitch Tom Brevoort on, here's the story. And Tom had a bunch of questions like, well, how is he still young? And I was like, they kept him in suspended animation between missions. Like some of it was like, I had figured that he would be working for the Russians because I wanted him to be used as like a twisted thing where he was used against, everything he believed so that when he eventually got his memories back, it would be this horrible tragedy. Because you can't take away the biggest tragedy in Captain America without replacing it with an equal or larger tragedy, which is that, oh my God, Bucky was out there all these years and I could have saved him. Mm-hmm. And Bucky hates himself because he was turned into everything he hated. He was an enemy to his own country. But as I was working on that, I was trying to figure out what the code name would be. And I just thought, Russia, I started thinking cold. And then I immediately thought about the Thomas Paine quote about the summer soldier and the winter soldier and the the hearings where John Kerry first became famous about Vietnam War, the Winter Soldier hearings, actually in the early 70s or late 60s. And I got those words, Winter Soldier, and I just saw that and I was like, oh, that's a perfect name for like a Russian operative who they're sending back against America. And then I just, I pitched Tom, and Tom just loved it. And we started doing it, and I was like, and the pitch was like, and he kills the Red Skull at the end of the first issue, and we still don't have any idea who he is. We reveal him like at the end of the first arc that it's Bucky. And I remember when that first issue, that reveal issue was coming out, I called up Tom Brevoort that morning, and I was like, I think we made a mistake. This is going to be the worst reaction that we ever are going to get to anything. This is the end of my career. How could you let me do this? This is like, Stan Lee didn't have the guts to do this. Like, no, everybody's going to hate me so much. Because the reaction to what Steve and I were doing on Captain America at that point was like the biggest reaction that anyone had had to Captain America since like Grunwald was doing it, or Mark Waid. It was like, it really hit big in a way, because it touched on a lot of classic Captain America stuff while sort of feeling a bit more modern and like a thriller. And Epting's art, that first double page spread, he's like leaping onto a moving train and throwing the shield and taking out a helicopter and catching the shield. And it's just like, you feel like you're in those action moments with them. And, we just got really lucky. And I thought, oh, well, this is all going to go away now. All the fans are going to fucking hate this. And, then it was, I was fucking wrong as usual. And it ended up being like the biggest hit. It's the most popular Marvel character since Deadpool. It's like, holy fucking shit. Like, I had no clue that was going to work out. I thought this would be a thing. I bought a t-shirt that they sold online to wear to the convention that year that said rule number 1, Bucky stays dead. Because I wanted to acknowledge that I was like making fun of myself, because I assumed everyone would hate it. But I wore that shirt and people were like, oh, you don't like Brubaker's run? And I'm like, I'm Brubaker. But yeah, so it was a blast. And I just, the lack of editorial interference was amazing. Like Joe and Dan Buckley both, once the book was a hit, it was kind of like, hey, leave Ed alone to do whatever he wants on this book. And I didn't have to deal with a lot of the crossover stuff. And the book could be its own thing. I mean, we killed off you guys were just talking about the show. Like, we killed off Captain America, and nobody was Captain America for like over a year in the comic. And then eventually, like, Jeff Loeb called up and he's like, shouldn't someone wear a costume? And then there was a big fight. Should it be Bucky or Sam? And for me, it was like, well, I'm telling the Bucky book, obviously. And this is like a path to his redemption. So it makes sense that it would be him. But yeah, I was like listening to you guys talk about the thing with the arm, and I'm like, what's the thing with the arm? Because I did a thing in the comic where they take the arm away from him when he gets arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D., and then the arm gets activated and beats the shit out of everybody and makes its way back to Bucky. I was just having fun with it. I'm like, it's like a scene in Alien. It's like this weird metal arm skittering down the hall.
It's the hand.
So you guys have made me want to watch it.
Now, when first time they introduced Winter Soldier and Captain America, the Captain America sequel, was it Captain America 2, the Winter Soldier?
Yeah.
Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Did you know that they were taking the character into the movies? Do you get a heads up as the character?
I did at that point. It was so early on, and like when Kevin first took over, like when I first met Kevin, he was like second in command, and there was some other guy, I can't remember his name, who was like, when they were doing the movies through like were they Sony or Fox or somebody?
When they did the first few through Paramount.
Yeah, Paramount, that's right. And that's when I met Kevin, and we really hit it off. And he was telling me that my Cap book and this other thing I did that was about the origin of the Marvel universe, like he just really liked the tone of what Epting and I were doing. And so like I was in pretty regular contact with them about that stuff then. They didn't tell me in advance. I was told at the after party for the first movie that the question now was whether they do the Winter Soldier as the second movie or the third movie. They weren't sure, but they had clearly set it up. You know, you could see it in the premiere or in the first movie when Bucky dies, and it's like, oh, he doesn't die, and he got his arm blasted off. So I thought, okay, it's either going to be the second or the third movie, but the first movie wasn't the biggest Marvel movie, and leaving that movie and looking at its box office, I was like, oh, they may never make, you know, the sequel. And then when they announced the sequel, it was funny. It was like the night after the Eisners, and I was walking from the convention to meet some friends at like one of the hotels, like the Hyatt or something. And you know, that walk, it's like fucking forever. It's like the longest block in history. And my phone just kept blowing up. And I look and I keep saying, congrats. And I'm like, why does everybody give a shit about the Eisner Awards all of a sudden? And then Jeff Boucher from the LA Times was calling for a comment on the Winter Soldier movie. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I just left the convention floor. and then I checked online and I'm like, oh, everybody's talking about how the next movie is called Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And I'm like, holy shit. And then I got an email from Kevin a couple weeks later asking me to do like a cameo in it, which was pretty cool. I'm in a scene.
Cameo in it. Where's your cameo?
I'm in one of the Redford scenes. It's me and Pat Healy are two Russian scientists, and it's like the scene where Bucky's it's like a bank vault, and he's like strapped down, and he was like covered in cocoa butter or something. My hands just kept slipping off of him when I had to push him down on the thing. I love Sebastian. He's like amazing and like an intense actor. But I met him at the after party, and I had already been a fan from like other stuff. And when they announced him, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, he's perfect for it. But yeah, I got to go be in a scene. I had dialogue, but it got cut out. They either I did it terribly or they just didn't need me yelling in Russian or something like that. But it's great because I got the SAG royalties from it. So I still get SAG residuals from because I had like a full week I was there for 3 days. So you have to get the full week. So yeah, and it was a speaking part. I had to, I didn't find out until afterwards as I'm signing the 4,000 like contracts that they make you sign before they put you back on the shuttle to the hotel. But it was great. I wish I had shaved my beard more. I wish I'd paid more attention I'm like a writer. I stay at home. I saw the thing and I'm like, I made Robert Redford do another take accidentally. Like there was this great moment where it's like Redford's in the foreground, Frank Grillo, Pat Healy, and then there's Ed fucking Brubaker, the not actor. They're all they're action figures on a shelf. They are not moving. They are fucking background. I'm like, well, I'm a Russian scientist, so I'm like, Joe Russo walks by. He's like, everybody, you're great. Ed, don't move your fucking hands. He's like, look at what Frank's doing and do that. I'm like, Frank looks like he's in a sealed in the mint box action figure pose. I was like, I can't do that.
You're like, I got writer hands, man.
Yeah. I was like, okay, all right. So I just didn't move. But there's this great, it's like for a while it was my screen background. It was just like Robert Redford with like a blurry me right behind him. And I just thought, well, that's great because my last name's Brubaker. And most of my life when I've introduced myself to people, they'd be like, oh, like the Redford movie, which you are old enough to remember. Brubaker.
That's true. But did you reference that to him? You're like, I'm Brubaker.
Oh, I didn't have a... I had hi, nice to meet you was my Robert Redford interaction. No, they wrapped him for the day, and I never saw a guy. I mean, I don't know how old he was at that point, like 82 or something. We're in Cleveland, and he ran like 200 yards down the hall and up the stairs to just get the fuck out. And I was just
love it, man. Even especially perhaps at his age, an actor is like, when I'm done, I'm done. Like,
yeah, and he had that like super famous thing too going on where he was like reading the Wall Street Journal, the pink section, and like like he wasn't making eye contact with people in a way that it's like, because if he made eye contact with people, it would take him 3 hours to get to his trailer.
Right.
You know, it's like when you're at Comic-Con with like Brian Posehn or something, and you're like, oh, I'm never making it to this dinner because you're gonna get selfies taken with 7 million people because you are 8 feet tall. You are unhideable at Comic-Con. But yeah, no, I there was a moment where I was like, oh, I'm going to tell him this Brubaker story and he'll think it's charming and then we'll become best friends. And I was like, yeah, he's not going to give a shit. He all he wants to hear about is, hey, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for being in this movie. Like, it's a job.
We have seen 4 episodes of Winter Soldier, but you have not. Now, what's the story there? How do you not check in on your kid, your baby? Get his own show. He's all grown up.
I know. I probably will watch it at some point. I have a little bit of I'm conflicted about it because like I knew going in it was work for hire, but also when I was writing it, they didn't have their own movie studio and weren't owned by Disney. So the idea that this character would go on to be a huge franchise where kids would come trick-or-treating at my house dressed as him.
No.
And like,
really?
yeah, totally. And like at Comic-Con, like so many people dressed as the Winter Soldier wanting to take selfies with me. He's huge among like the gay community too. Like women dress up as the Winter Soldier a lot. And there's like all this slash fiction, which I used to work on Castro Street at a bookstore. So I'm like big on back then it was just Kirk and Spock and the occasional Sam and Frodo.
Right.
Like Steve and Bucky, which they call Stucky.
We live in a world where there's Jay and Silent Bob version of science fiction. People have written those stories. So I could see there being
Jay and Silent Slob.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and which is for me, like one of the things that I love the most about having played a part in this is like, this is a character who has impacted like pop culture in a major way. Like there were hoodies, like when the Winter Soldier movie came out, there were like all these kids leaving the theater in like the hoodies with the Bucky arm. And I'm like, this is amazing. How come I didn't get a hoodie?
Yeah, really. Like, where's my hoodie?
Yeah, exactly. Which is part of the problem. But like, I also love that he's part of counterculture. He's like pop culture and counterculture, like that. Like who besides Fritz the Cat or like Mickey Mouse is like that's an even rarer thing to create a thing or co-create a thing that has had that much of an impact on the world. And you know, I get so many emails from people who that storyline and that character meant so much to them, and I still like my Captain America books still sell like a ton whenever Marvel like reprints them. And I always get feedback from people about, you know, people send me, they've gotten the full arm tattoo, which that's fucking insane. You have Bucky's arm tattooed onto your arm.
Forever, for life.
Have to change the star. I always was changing the star every 5 issues because I couldn't figure out what it should be. But yeah, so that I feel like really, you know, I feel a little conflicted because on the one hand, that's amazing. And I never expected that would, like I said, I thought that would be the end of my career. And instead it's this thing that has gone on to be a huge phenomenon. But at the same time, it's like, as the years went on, I started to just think, well, how come we're not getting anything for this really? Like, how come we really get like a thanks to or a credit? But like, these movies are making billions and billions of dollars, and it feels like we just kind of got a bad deal. And I remember sitting there during the third movie and knowing how much I had actually turned down like this tiny little thank you check because I was like, this is an insult. Like, this is ridiculous. And it hurt my feelings actually, which is like, you know, like, it's just, I'm an artist. I write these things. And I was watching that movie and there's like 2/3 of that movie or like a third of that movie is a plot line that I wrote for a year in my comic book about Bucky training all these other Winter Soldiers. It was like their B plot. but the whole B plot and a lot of the emotional arc of the movie was like stuff that wouldn't exist had I not written these comics. And I was just sitting there, and everybody who I knew was in that theater with me. And also, I was in the overflow theater, by the way, at this movie for some reason, which that's another one where you're just like, Jesus Christ, like twist the fucking knife. I'm in the
that burns a little
right hand side. Like, gee, put me first row. Come on, like how bad can it be? It starts to feel personal.
At movie premieres, there's the big house where like the writers and directors and stars go, and then there's the overflow theater where everybody who's invited but doesn't walk the red carpet gets to go.
Yeah,
so that's like the press and like the stars of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. It's always the comic book people who are in the overflow theater. It's kind of funny. So everybody kept coming over to me after the movie and going, how much did they give you for this? How much? So it was like when you have 100 people asking you how much they give you for this, it starts to eat away at you a little bit. So there's just like, look, I knew what I was getting into, and I'm not unhappy with my life or that I wrote this thing. Like, I am super proud of all the work I did on Daredevil and Cap, and I don't love my X-Men run, but there were people who liked it. But I loved working at Marvel. I had a great time there. But at the same time, I also feel like, be a little bit more generous. Like, invite us to the after party. Like, Steve Epting and I had to text Sebastian Stan to get into the after party at the Captain America Winter Soldier movie because Kevin's assistant didn't have me on his list, even though I was texting Kevin. And he's like, you're on my list. And the assistant I'm watching let in like every other assistant in Hollywood. And then when I finally get into the party, there's all these bloggers and stuff. And I'm like, here's Steve Epting and I in our tuxedos. It's just like,
inarguably, without you guys, there is no fucking movie.
It's weird. It's like, I'm complaining about it because I'm sitting here talking to you guys about it. I feel bad complaining about it because so much of what I have in my life came from writing those comics, that regardless, like if I never make a dime on the Winter Soldier, I still have one of the best lives of any comic book writer in the history of the medium. I've spent the last 10 years, 15 years writing things that I own completely, and that I have a wide enough audience because of doing stuff like Gotham Central and Catwoman, but mainly because of my time on Captain America. I wrote Captain America for 8 years, and that I developed a huge fan base during that time. When I launched Criminal, which was my first fully creator-owned book, when I had just finished doing the Death of Cap storyline, which sold 1 million copies, and Sean Phillips, my artist, had just done Marvel Zombies with Robert Kirkman, which had sold 500,000 copies. So we were at the biggest our name recognition could ever be, and we launched the least commercial, pot. We launched a indie crime comic, and it sold so much that we could continue to do it, and that just felt like a victory. But now it's been 15, 16 years, we're still doing these books, and that has just steamrolled into its own career to the point now where we're just going straight to graphic novels and and so it's like I have this whole library that I've been able to do, and so much of that wouldn't have existed if not for the Winter Soldier. So it's like it's not cut and dried, right? Oh, look.
I know. Hold on. Let me get you.
You've got it disappearing.
Yeah, and it's looking at a book like this and reading a book like Pulp, it feels very much inspired by your Winter Soldier experiences, right? Where here's an old guy who had been writing fucking dime store novel type stories, Westerns that it's work for hire. And his editors kind of treat him like shit, eventually bring another dude in to write his stories, and the sort of the lack of gratitude on behalf of the establishment for the work that he had done for years and years and years. And so he's got to go someplace else to finally make the money because his wife will be left with nothing should he die.
And a lot of that, strangely, as you say that, I realize part of that is inspired by the Winter Soldier, that and the one I did before that, Bad Weekend, about the old guy going to the comic convention to get his Lifetime Achievement Award, where he basically decks Stan Lee on stage at the award ceremony. It's a stand-in for Stanley. But that, like not long after you had your heart attack, which I feel like woke up our whole generation in a weird way. Like you had a heart attack.
Oh no, shit. Fucking
Yeah.
if it could happen to him, it could happen to me.
Oh yeah. I'm like, hey, I don't imagine I'm any healthier than you. I assume less. So I assume especially now less. You look like you should change the name of the show to Slender Man or something.
That name's taken and it scares children, Ed. So we
do the scaring of children plenty.
Fat Man is inviting to children. What kid doesn't like a fat man?
Come into this van. It's fine.
like John Wayne Gacy.
Exactly.
But yeah, almost a little over 2 years ago, I was saved from drowning. And one of the things that was the hardest, like for months after that, I was just going through the trauma of having nearly drowned. I was in the water for like half an hour. I got sucked out in a riptide because I was the guy who had been going out boogie boarding every day thinking, this is the greatest, I'm in the greatest shape of my life. And then I got sucked out in a riptide.
So wait a second. We always hear about people getting sucked out by riptides. And you're a person who's not even a casual water enthusiast. If you've got a boogie board, that means you.
Oh yeah, no. I grew up, in partly, in like Gitmo, we went in the water in Cuba all the time. I had moved to San Diego and grew up near Ocean Beach and Dog Beach. I was in the water a lot. I was on the water polo team, but I hadn't swum regularly for 20 years. You go to your friends' houses in LA that have a pool. They don't have a swimming pool. They have like a hangout pool where you throw shit around for their kids and their dog. So I hadn't gotten like swimming exercise regularly. And, boogie boarding is not the same thing as swimming. It's fun exercise, but you're mostly just having fun. And I got sucked out. It was, I knew I shouldn't have gone in that day. I walked down and there were no surfers in the water. And I thought, but the waves looked really good, even closer to the shore. And I just stepped off of a sandbar. And next thing I knew, I was 100 yards out. And I'd never been in a riptide. So I had no idea that if I'd just gone another 10 yards out, I would have been out of it the other way. But when you're stuck out to sea, you don't swim further out.
But wait, what do you mean? If you had gone 10 feet?
Tides only go a certain spot. That's why the surfers use them as like an escalator out to where the waves get good. You can just jump in a riptide on a surfboard and just glide along the top of the water. But in a boogie board, you're half underwater. So I was like treading water and holding on this boogie board, and suddenly I'm out where the waves are like 12 feet tall. And I'm trying to figure out, and I did everything wrong. I knew you're supposed to swim sideways to get out of it or at an angle. But by the time I realized I was there, I had been trying to catch waves for 10 minutes to ride one back in, which you can't do because the water's going two directions. So it looks like this great wave that you can catch. And then next thing you know, it's gone and you're watching the wave go away and you're getting more and more exhausted. And I was out there for about a half an hour. My wife was on the beach with the dog and she was on the phone with 911 and all the cops in town and the fire people were showing up. And I was like, is anybody going to come out here and get me? I'm like waving.
Yeah.
I'm like,
get a boat! Someone get a boat!
They were like 2 minutes away from calling over to Monterey to have someone come over in a boat and just grab me. And luckily I had a flotation device. But I was starting to get hit by these big waves and go under, and I was swallowing salt water. And it was the most terrifying, like 25 or 30 minutes of my life. And then at this moment, I just saw someone coming through the water at me. And I just thought, holy shit, someone's coming to save me. And when they got there, I was like, please save me. Like, I had never been more like, please save me. And the guy just told me, hold on to the board as tight as you can. He took the leash and he said, I'm going to pull you out of here. You need to just pedal. You need to just paddle with your feet. And I said, I got nothing left, man. And he's like, just do it. And I just kicked as hard as I could. And we went, and it probably took us about 10 minutes to get in. It was a really bad day. There was a reason surfers weren't out there. And I got lucky. He was like an 18-year-old water polo player who had done like a couple years of lifeguard training. He saw me, he ran down, he asked my wife if I was okay. And she said, no, he needs help. And he just fucking took off everything, and he had a little bathing suit on, and I'm in a full wetsuit. The water's like 52 degrees. This guy jumps right into the riptide, and he's to me in like 15 seconds. And he saves my life. He drags me in, but I'm out there for about a half an hour, and I'm thinking, this is it. And one of the things I'm thinking is, I'm leaving my wife with nothing. Like, I'm leaving her with debt, really. Like, I mean, maybe she'll be able to sell my library, like, you know, to Hollywood or to Robert Kirkman or somebody to, you know, make enough money to pay off our house. But it was like, we owed money on this house. I, you know, had just finished like a TV project that I'd spent 2 years on and was like exhausted. And I just thought, you know, like, we're doing okay. But I was leaving, like, how was she going to survive after that? Like, there was like, how would she pay off the rest of this house and be able to live where she wants to live? And, you know, like, that was all I thought. It was like, I got to get back in. This can't be it for me. And when I got back to the shore, like, I changed everything in my life after that. But I remember one of the things I thought at the time, and that book really, that thing really inspired Pulp, was because it's about like an old Wild West guy who, you know, like lives through into the like late 30s and sees the whole world change. And then he realizes, like, I got nothing to leave to this woman. He has a heart attack. And he just wants to provide for his wife. So he starts plotting to become a bad guy again. But all I was thinking at the time was like, I got to be able to provide for my family. Like, I can't, what if I had just died? Like, that would have been so fucked for everybody, me included. Well, me the least, because I'd be dead. So the fuck, I wouldn't fucking care. Yeah. But and then I thought about that, and I was like, you know, it's ridiculous that, like, being a co-creator of the Winter Soldier, that's like, I literally, like, I should not have to be worried about providing for my wife if I die, like, right now. And I don't live like a high life. I'm well off too. I do well, but it's like, it started to just feel like this kind of hurts a little bit to be like overlooked this way. And I know that they've made deals with other people that have had less input on what they do. And I just kind of felt like it just sucks. Like, I remember sitting in that movie and just feeling like this little Jack Kirby cancer thing, or like ulcer growing in my stomach, of just being like, this is what it felt like, kid, except 100 times worse for me. So fuck you. So it was like, so part of me was like, look, I knew what I was getting into. Everybody goes through this, but at the same time, I can't deny that it's just kind of like, it's hard for me on like a personal level. It actually hurts my feelings a bit. And it's like, I said something about it publicly like a month ago, because I'd check my public email for my newsletter. There'd be hundreds of people, like some press, fans, everybody wanted me to talk about the show. Aren't you excited about the show? And I'm like, I think I might be the only person in America not excited about the show. When I see the ads for the show, it actually makes me feel kind of sick to my stomach. And it reminded me
heartbreaking to hear, man.
Isn't it? Like, yeah. Why would you want, as a company, why would you want that to be the way the creators feel? Like, wouldn't you want the creator? Like, when I work with people, I try to give them the best deal possible. And if something ends up being a bigger thing, I'll try to actually adjust their deal so that they take part in that too. Because it's like, I want everybody I work with to feel like they got a really good deal and that they were treated well. But like, I see these ads and stuff, and I'm like, this just kind of hurts a little bit. And it made me think about Dave Chappelle, with like Dave Chappelle is the most successful comedian, arguably, of the 21st century, maybe even longer. He's definitely a guy who gets paid like $15 million by Netflix for a single special. And yet, when Netflix and Peacock put up the Dave Chappelle show, Dave Chappelle was like, hey, you guys know I don't get anything for this because I was young and I signed a stupid contract that's like a standard contract that every single person who was doing a show at Comedy Central signed that same contract. Like, he basically was like, hey, this sucks for me. and I just thought the whole world had so much sympathy for this guy. And I just thought, like, how is Dave Chappelle, like Comedy Central called him up and they were like, let's fix this. 20 years later, they didn't have to. There was no legal reason for them to do it. And I was just like, that's just a sign of people realizing like, yeah, sometimes people get a shitty deal and they should get a better one maybe. And it's like, there's nothing preventing anyone at Marvel from looking at like how much the Winter Soldier has been used in all this stuff and calling out me and Steve Epting and saying, you know what, we're gonna try and adjust, you know, the standard thing so that you guys are actually feel good about this. Because it's not like I'm like, oh, give me all the money or whatever. Like I make a good living and I have like the life I actually want. If I never get a dime from the Winter Soldier from them ever again, like I still have a really great life as a writer, and I will, you know, like, you know, I'm not going to die and not provide for my wife. Like I've spent a couple years now working my ass off to make sure that's not going to happen. But it's just weird to see that that's coming on. And it's like, I like Kevin. I like the guys who write those Captain America movies. I love the Russo brothers. They've done nothing but great to me. All the Marvel Studios people, James Gunn has had me like around to like see early cuts of his movies. I love James. Like all these people have treated me so great. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, like, don't do me favors. You know, it's like, I'm a professional writer. I wrote this stuff. I work in Hollywood. I've worked in TV. I've worked in film. I did a fucking TV show with Nicholas Refn for 2 years. I know how hard it is to do this stuff. It's a miracle that the Marvel stuff comes out as good as it is, because you know how hard it is to make anything at all. Even like Vince Gilligan has a great quote, like when you're working on a TV show or a movie, you have no idea whether you're making a good one or a bad one. And it's just as hard to make both, you know? So I'm always like, whatever Kevin has done and all the people who've worked there, it's a miracle, because when I do see those movies, I'm always like, these are the best thing, you know. Like a friend of mine is now working on the Black Panther 2 with Coogler that started pre-production today, I think. And I'm like excited to see that, because Coogler, I think, is a once in a generation filmmaker. Like I met him years ago, like before Fruitvale even came out, because he's a real legit comic nerd. And, you know, like he was just like one of the coolest, nicest guys I ever met. And to see him go on to this raging success is amazing to me. But at the same time, I'm like the only person in America who, like, I'll probably watch The Winter Soldier next year, or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier next year. And I love those. Anthony Mackie's perfect as the Falcon. But it's just like, it's like if someone took Clerks away from you and made it.
Because we all get to enjoy this. And the one guy who should be enjoying it the most, because he set it in motion unwittingly, isn't getting to enjoy it. Like, oh, that bums me out.
I mean, and that's the thing. I don't want people to think I'm like some sour, because like I said, like I have a great life and I will watch these things. I watch the movies, but it's just like when you watch a movie and you start to feel like, I feel like I might be getting ripped off here. Like it's just this moment of just like, it would not be hard for them. It would be an accounting error for them to actually compensate creators for what they do. Like, you know, in a way that was even half as good as you get compensated in Hollywood for this stuff. I have made more on SAG residuals than I have made on creating the character, you know, from my one line that got cut. And
God, really?
Yeah. And the last time that they tried to like make me some kind of a thank you offer kind of thing, which was like, you know, I'm never going to make a living on thank yous, but it was like, it was such a small amount that they offered that I just said, no, I'd rather just have the right to be angry that I got, that I got a bad deal than take like, you know, what like a 2 weeks of salary for like a writing room assistant, you know, like, it's just weird that they're so ungenerous about it to me. And especially it's weird because a lot of them are friends of mine, or people who I thought were friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And I also know from having worked there that there is a corporate mentality where they're like, right now, someone inside Marvel Publishing somewhere is watching this tomorrow and laughing that I think I got ripped off. Like there are people who think it's funny that I'm unhappy about it. And I know for a fact, because I've watched them be that way about other people, like in person. And I'm just like, there's a sort of, and like I worked really hard on that, and that story meant a lot to me. And I look at those credits when they come up, and there's all these other executive producers who are like people who were just like at the publishing level who had nothing to do with it. And I'm like, okay, so I know how much that EP credit actually makes you in a TV show at Disney, and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, these people have made so much money on stuff that Steve and I did, and it's just, and I work in Hollywood for a living. I make most of my living in Hollywood. And, like I know how even a bad Hollywood deal is pretty good. So it's just, it's just kind of a bummer. It's like, why wouldn't they be more generous? Like, why would you want Ed Brubaker to be the one person who's not excited about the Winter Soldier TV show? Like,
can't they Ed break off a piece?
Yeah.
Just a piece for heaven's sake.
But at the same time, like hearing you guys talk about it, that gave me such a thrill to be like, because first off, you're like, I remember when you went from being the guy who made like indie films that were influenced by Hal Hartley to like, oh, I'm a full-on fucking nerd and now I just tour and talk. And I thought, this is crazy. This guy keeps going from the career we all thought we wanted in the early 90s to just doing a bunch of random shit. But I realized now you were way ahead of the curve, for one thing. But I remember watching one of your specials where you talked about directing Cop Out. And I don't think I ever laughed as hard for like an hour when you're telling the Bruce Willis story. And I just thought, okay, this guy is a legit nerd. And he also doesn't give a shit about what anyone else says. Like, he's not mad. He's not worried Bruce Willis is going to call him up afterwards. He probably did. And,
he did, but like mistakenly.
He butt dialed you.
He called me up one day and like it was years later and he was like, hey, Kev, how are you? I was like, I'm great, man. How are you? And we talked for a while and stuff. And he goes, I'm going to come to LA soon, so I'll come see you. And I was like, that'd be amazing. Yeah, like fantastic. And then he never showed up.
Of course.
But then a month later, 2 months later, he was like, hey, I'm going to send you pictures. I found pictures of you and Rose. And I thought he meant that my daughter's name was Rose. Her name is Harley, but I thought he just remembered it as Rose. Because I couldn't imagine who Rose was that I took pictures with. He said, I'm going to send him to you. I was like, okay. He sent him to the office in Jersey. And then he called me a week later. He was texting me. I was getting like a lot of calls from this number, and I don't answer my cell phone, but then like the number kept like, it was the same number over and over again. And then finally he texted me from that number and he said, hey, Kev, it's Bruce. And I was like, Bruce? He was like, Bruce Willis. So I was like, holy cow. So I called him and he was like, hey, did you get those pictures? And I was like, they're at the office in Jersey. I'm out here in California, but they're going to send them out here. Thank you for sending him. And he goes, well, this is a little embarrassing, but like those pictures are for another Kevin. So he had like picked a Kevin in his phone and he picked the wrong one. So the calls that we had, he thought he was talking to a different Kevin altogether, man. So I thought like, right on, we're putting this behind us. But in reality, he was never going to call Kevin Smith again. Some other Kev who knows Rose, he was happy to speak to, but not this
That's
guy.
the greatest story of all time.
Costner's waiting for his pictures to drop.
Exactly. He's just like, why didn't he call me? So for everyone out there, because in chat, you got a lot of people who are like, pay Ed Brubaker as a hashtag and stuff. But in a world where they can't make Disney do something Disney doesn't want to do, how can they compensate or reward you? Where can they get pulp? Where can they get all your books?
Oh, any comic store, Amazon, I have a bunch of new books. Oh, thank you, Mark. I was going to have them displayed on the shelf behind me, but then I thought even I can't be quite that douchey. But look, I have my new series. I'm doing a new series of graphic novels about a you'd like that. I sent you the first two. It's like Rockford meets The Equalizer kind of thing in early 80s LA, like a surfer who you can hire to solve your problems for you. And it's like the existentialist version of like a 70s pulp like a paperback character, like the Executioner or somebody like that, like these lurid kind of montage painted covers that imply there's going to be all sorts of sex and stuff in it, and then you read it and you're like, that's a fun action mystery that's also like this sort of existentialist detective depressing thing.
Right.
But I do that stuff, you know, that's what I mainly make my living on, is that and screenwriting now. I don't, you know, and this is another thing. Like I said, I'm so thrilled listening to you guys talk about the show, to the point where I'm like, I should just watch the show and just suck up my own, because listening to you guys talk about it, like that's the thing that makes me say, like, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, it's not all one thing or the other. Like, it's never, like, I don't want people to think I just sit around all bitter about Bucky all the time or whatever. Like, I got to fucking bring Bucky back.
Isn't that the name of your autobiography? Bitter about Bucky.
Bitter about Bucky.
Who
Kill
makes
Captain
Bitter
America.
about Bucky.
Yeah, I like that. That means so much to me, and the fact that fans actually do care about this stuff. But I also know there's another part of the fan base that is like, fuck him. He signed a fucking deal, and you know, he knew what he was getting into, and like whatever. That's the truth. I did sign a deal, and I knew what I was getting into. You know, that stuff changes over time. You look back at a deal you signed 20 years ago, and you're like, oh, this is kind of a shitty deal. I wish it was a better one. But I don't at all want other people not to enjoy the thing. Like, you know, like I'm thrilled for Sebastian Stan that he's finally getting more screen time, you know, like, so I will watch the thing and enjoy it. It's just like, I gotta sort of prepare myself more mentally for it, of like, all right, just understand that there's some part of you that's going to be like, you know, and it's like, it's a little rough, but you know, at the same time, I hadn't thought about any of this stuff until they started putting out ads for the show for years, you know, because I was like, all right, well, he's in like 2 minutes of those Avengers movies. Like, I didn't think about it. I went to see those movies like, oh, well, there's Winter Soldier. And then, you know, on the ride home, I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to get anything for that. But
because the rest of us like see the Winter Soldier, we're like, I know I'm going to get something out of that, like joy for 6 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. And that means, you know, that's, look, you know, I almost died a couple of years ago. Like, the fact that something I created, and by the way, let me just say, the kid that saved my life would take no fucking reward when I went out to buy him coffee, like the next day, to like just try to figure out what I can do for this kid. Like, the only thing about my life that impressed him at all was the Winter Soldier. He's a fan of all the Marvel movies. So I was like, I got saved by a Winter Soldier fan. And it's like, I learned so much of my morality as a kid from reading like Captain America comics, or, I mean, when I was a kid, Captain America was like resigning from being Captain America because of Watergate and stuff. So I'm like age 5 learning about that shit because of Captain America. Like, it affected so much of my morality and my sense of right and wrong and justice, which is why I think it's odd that the people who do these things, publish these comics about the difference between right and wrong when it comes to the treatment of creators overall. And it's not me, I'm the least of it, you know, like, I didn't create fucking Wolverine, you know, like Bucky existed already. I created the Winter Soldier part of it, but you know, Jack Kirby created Bucky and Joe Simon, like, I get that, like, but it's weird that these companies that do these morality things, like, they can sit down and just be like, all right, well, he doesn't get anything, so fuck him. Like, you know, like, well, like Captain America would not be okay with that. I think I can speak for him.
I wrote him for 8 years. You're the authority on the subject.
Embarrassed that they're so ungenerous about it. And but that's, you know, they're also Disney, you know, it's like, it's a big company. I mean, everybody thinks Walt Disney did everything. No one knows who the hell Ub Iwerks is, you know, except Mark is nodding.
Yeah, I know that dude.
So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, I get to do, you know, and Winter Soldier got me here on this podcast to talk to you guys, where I get to have Mark like plug my other books for me. Like, there's no real downside to it. There's just like, I wish there were more upside.
I remember running into you at a party. I want to say that like Ben Abernathy was leaving Wildstorm, and there was some like
Oh yeah,
drink up at like Tony's Darts Away.
Yeah, Tony's Darts Away. Yeah.
And I was relatively early into my comics writing career, and I was like lamenting my time at DC. And you were like, listen, man, honestly, just do it for a little bit, do it and get yourself a following. It's like I'm doing better now after having worked for Marvel than I ever did while I was working for Marvel.
Yeah.
Like, I think you had just begun the criminal stuff. And
yeah.
I'm happier now. I'm making more money now. Like, you do your time, you do good work, you build an audience, and then you bring that audience to the stuff that means the most to you.
Well, and that's the thing too. I had a lot of friends who would come in to work at Marvel or DC, and they would always act like they were slumming. And I was like, no, dude, this is your real work too. Like, just because you don't own it, like I lied to myself every month that I owned Daredevil and Captain America and Bucky, and because I wanted to invest my full, whatever I do into that. I hold those up against all the stuff that I did that I own. But yeah, it helped build that audience. It helped me figure out how to, I wrote 125 issues of Captain America. If you add like all the specials and spin-offs and stuff together, like I learned so much about writing. And, Kevin, you've written comics and you've written movies and TV and stuff. If you come from comics into Hollywood, you have a pre-compartmentalized brain in a way as a writer, and people appreciate that a lot. Like I remember when I was in the Westworld writing room, like I came in as a guy who'd published like 1,000 things. By the time I sat down in that room, I had no hesitation to pitch ideas, to the point where I actually had to be pulled aside by the showrunner and said, hey, maybe let other people pitch every now and then. But like it's such a good training for everything. And also, like, I grew up loving these characters. Like me and Matt Fraction got to make Iron Fist cool. Like, come on, he was in ballet slippers for 40 years because Gil Kane didn't know what kung fu boots looked like. But like I got to do all this really cool stuff, and it's like I certainly don't want, especially on your show where you guys are just like, whenever I watch your show, it's like you guys love the stuff you're talking about. Like, I don't want to be the drag who comes on your show and it's like, the studio. Like,
one of us more than the other, Ed.
Yeah, let's be clear. I love the stuff we're talking about. I don't always like it.
People part of Gotham.
Yes, that's an excellent point. Put that on a fucking shirt, Mark. I love the shit we talk about. I just don't always like it.
I loved your review. I watched the whole thing before I came on, and I loved watching you guys talk about Godzilla, the Godzilla King Kong movie, where all my questions while watching that movie, I'm like, how is Kong standing up on a ship? Isn't the whole ship flipping over? How is the ship bigger than the Empire State Building? And how can Kong climb the Empire State Building, which he's now taller than?
Yeah, and how do they get Kong onto a net suspended by helicopters? Like,
and
how do you get the net under Kong?
He goes into the center of the earth, and there's like another world in there.
And there's a light source?
And I'm like,
how is there a light source in the center of the planet?
It's the Earth's core, Mark, obviously.
No, it's just nothing but it's crust on both sides. It's like a pie. And there's no
I love when he just jumps from one side to the other, and then it's like, I guess we're done here, and Godzilla's going to blast a hole through the earth, and Kong will just jump through it, and then they'll fight some more. I fell asleep a few times, and I kept waking up and asking my wife, why are they fighting? I don't really know, but
because it's in the title. It's in the title, Ed.
As a writer, you could come up with a zillion reasons they were fighting, my friend.
I agree with you, though. I would take the 45-minute just all fight cut. Like, why not? And actually, like, have some voiceover where it's like round 2.
Or some like Attenborough type, voiceover about like, this is what happens.
It's like a Planet Earth episode. And then the Godzilla runs into the massive King Kong.
The native habitat of the Titanic's gargantuan.
It can be charming sometimes too, because sometimes it's not always dire. Sometimes it's like, look, they want to play, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Kong scratches his ass every morning, as is his wont.
Ed, you got a website or you got a Twitter and Instagram you want to send anybody to?
I am not on any kind of social media. I have a newsletter, but I would not be able to tell you how to find it because I set it up at some point and people keep signing up for it somehow. We're up to like 10,000 people.
Nice.
Mark's on it.
I am on it.
He's one of my original subscribers.
That's where I get my Brubaker news. How else am I going to get it if he's not anyplace else to be found?
Email Mark and he will forward it to you. Like the thing that says subscribe.
I am now Ed's agent who does this pro bono.
Yeah, I do not miss. I did MySpace and then everybody quit MySpace for Facebook and I was like, oh fuck this shit. I just wasted all this fucking time on MySpace. So I never did Facebook. And then I did Twitter. And then at some point about 5 years ago, I just realized how many hours I had spent looking at Twitter or thinking about a tweet that I was going to try and make. And I wished I could get all those hours back and spend them reading books or comics or going to the movies. And so I just decided to do that instead. And I worried for a minute it would hurt my career, but if anything, it's helped. I think when people know less about you, they are more inclined to just judge your work in a way and not like try to like hold you to some sort of weird standard because like, you know, you make a joke and 10 years later, people look back at it like James Gunn I thought all those jokes were hilarious when he made them in 2004 on Twitter. You know, when they brought him up again, like 10 years later, I'm like, oh, I guess pedophilia is maybe not a great thing to joke about.
Yeah, like this didn't age very well.
Yeah, it seemed funny at the time because that's the kind of things people were joking about. Like we're all Generation X. Like our generation of comedians was like, how offensive can we be? You know, so.
I will say though, when I first started reading Ed Brubaker comic books, I thought you were like 78 years old. I thought you were like this grizzled pulp veteran. Like the name feels like some kind of 1950s, you know, fucking dime store novel writer. And then the work is all like super, like just texture and character and deep like angst. I'm like, no, clearly this is a dude who's been writing this stuff for a long time. I'm like, wait, we're the same age? Son of a bitch! He's so funny.
Well, I was writing from the time I was like 6 or 7 years old, like writing stories. I started writing crime stories as a teenager.
And were published by Del Rey.
I was a drug addict and a criminal. And it was write what you know, like a lot of the stuff that I started writing about, like all the characters in Criminal are based on like either some facet of me or some story that happened to a friend of mine who is dead now. And so I can write about it. But yeah, so I absorbed, when my girlfriend was in college, when I was living in Berkeley, and I would just go to Moe's Books and just buy Jim Thompson novels and David Goodis and all the Black Lizard stuff. And I would just go home and just absorb all that stuff. And so, yeah, I just kind of, because having been like a ex-criminal, like it really appealed to me to try to write like sympathetic criminals. But I do worry a lot about like the layering of things. And I think because I grew up writing and drawing my own comics, I think about the language of comics in a different way than a lot of people do. Like I worry a lot about the rhythm of the page, which I almost never hear people talking about when they're writing, which is like, I worry about how does the dialogue sound? How does the narration sound with it? How do the visuals feel like they're a part of the beat? Like all of that stuff, I really agonize and labor over, to the point where, I'm 40 and look at me. Well, I mean, I said to Kevin, I'm like, you had a heart attack and you have no gray facial hair at all. Like you're showing no gray. You look.
All you got to do is wear funny hats to distract. That's it. A series of funny hats will fix you right up. Here's my final question. We know that there is a Batman series coming to HBO Max after the Matt Reeves movie, which sounds an awful lot like Gotham Central.
Yeah, to the point where Deadline even announced it as Gotham Central. which was weird. They've been circling Gotham Central for so long. You know, Gotham was originally supposed to be Gotham Central. Like, I was actually told by people at DC, hey, you need to get all your paperwork in to make sure you're covered for all the Gotham Central characters, because in a month they're going to announce Gotham Central as a TV show. And then at the last minute, they decided to change it to Gotham and make it about little kid Bruce Wayne for some reason, which is like, okay. When I worked on Westworld, we were in the same building as Gotham. And so I would run into Bruno Heller in the elevator sometimes, and we would talk. And we went out to lunch, and he was like, yeah, I really wanted to make Gotham Central. And then they just said, this is what it is. And so this is what it is. And, but I was just like, tell me stories about Rome. Like, Rome was
I know. I was a big Rome fan too. I
learned why Rome ended. That was amazing. I'll tell you offline, because there's some fascinating stuff, but I can't talk in public.
I remember that was a pricey show.
That to me, I was like, when that came out, and then it wasn't Gotham Central, and I was like, oh man, they're never gonna make Gotham Central now. But then they announced this new one, where I was like, oh, maybe they are going to make Gotham Central this time. And Rucka is getting like everything he does made it, like, you know, Old Guard, and he's got this Gal Gadot movie, and Stumptown was like, you know, a hit until COVID happened. Like, I just thought, oh, maybe they're actually going to make Gotham Central this time. And then I reached out to a producer on that works for Matt Reeves. He said, no, that's not really Gotham Central. They're like they're making sure that they don't call it Gotham Central. And it's more of a spin-off from the movie, I guess. It's like the James Gordon show it's like a spin-off from their movie. But I got
one thing to say to the fucking comics industry, not the movie industry that takes from the comics industry. Pay this, I'm going to paraphrase fucking John Malkovich. Pay this man his fucking money. Look how far they're going out of the way. They're like, it's not Gotham Central. It is Gotham Central. It sounds like Gotham Central to me.
And every time they do it, it's not as good as what Gotham Central could be.
Like, I can't, you know, Gotham Central, also another book that just made my career. I can't claim to, I didn't even think about it when I was like, is this really Gotham Central? I'm like, oh no, it's a bunch of characters from the movie. And I was like, oh, so it's Gotham Central, but with different made up characters that Matt Reeves created instead. And then I was like, well, whatever. Like, Gotham Central was such a ripoff of Homicide, the book, because Rucka and I were both obsessed with David Simon's Homicide book. We were being offered a revamp of Batman and the Outsiders. And we talked, and both of us had no ideas for Batman and the Outsiders, and we just wanted to write about the cops in Gotham City. And so we took Shrek out to lunch, and we just pitched in the opening scene where Mr. Freeze kills the guy's partner and shatters him into a million pieces. And Shrek's like, all right, we're going to do that book. And then Mike Carlin at the time was insisting we call it Gotham Murder City. And I was like, no. And I remember we were at this meeting, and Jeanette Kahn showed up, she was the head of DC. And she's sitting next to Mike, who'd already shot down the name Gotham Central about 10 times. And I'm just like such a fucking asshole that I sketched the Gotham Central logo with like the badge and the name, and I slide it to Jeanette Kahn. And I was like, this is what we want to call the book. And she's like, oh, this is brilliant. And I remember everyone at the table looking at me like, you fucking asshole. You went over everybody's heads to get, and I was like, yeah, but we got to call the book Gotham Central. But yeah, that was just like Rucka and I just really wanted to write the cops, and they just let us. Like, we called back and we were like, we don't want to do this, you know, we don't want to do this thing. We want to do this thing. And Bendis had just done Powers, which was a huge hit. And we're like, imagine if Powers was about like the Mad Hatter and Harvey Bullock and the Joker. Like, imagine a Joker story from the point of view of the cops instead. And, you know, the Joker in a fucking interrogation booth, like killing the cop. Like, that was like so much fun to do. And like, to the point where like we felt so indebted to David Simon that we created a reporter character that's named after him and his wife with their permission. Because Rucka was friends with them from, you know, mystery writing field and stuff. And so that's just like, you know, that was just such a fun thing to do. I talked to Bruce Timm a couple years ago about, and was like trying to push for them to do an animated Gotham Central thing. But that kind of goes against the ethos of what they do a little bit. But I was like, you could take that Joker story where he comes to town and is the sniper and, you know, kills the mayor, kills the chief of police, like he kills a bunch of people, you know, and you could turn that into like one of those 80-minute, you know, animated things. I think that would be a really awesome way to do Gotham Central. But, you know, I hope that this HBO Max thing just turns out to be called Gotham Central and has, you know, some of the stuff we're doing in it. The trailer for that movie looks really cool, actually. Like Matt Reeves is a great filmmaker. I mean, I like Let the Right One In, but I actually really like his remake of it, even, which is normally like the American remake of a really cool, cheap Euro horror film is not as good, you know. And I was like, there's a scene in there that I've seen other people just steal from over and over again. The car crash scene when it rolls down the hill. That was the first time anybody had shot something like that, like outside of probably the guys who do Punked.
I just want them now to retitle HBO Max Gotham Central. I just want the entire channel. It's just Gotham Central.
I mean, that would be awesome. It would sell us a lot of books, and DC royalties are really nice. That's good.
They treat.
Oh, I just mean their publishing royalties, but yeah, they do. Well, they haven't done anything with any of my stuff since Paul left. Like when Paul Levitz was running the company, when you were there and stuff, like Paul was really generous about that stuff. Like even with that second Batman movie where they had the scene with the Joker in the interrogation booth, and I know from, you know, I met Chris Nolan once at a thing, which was the weirdest thing ever. Have you ever been in a room when Christopher Nolan walks into it? It's like a hush goes through the room or something. Like, it was weird. I was in the green room at a thing at the.
Why the hush? Because everyone's like
I don't suddenly
say about Tenet. Like, what's
the hush? Somebody. Oh yeah, this was before Inception even. But I think it was just that like everyone suddenly was just like. Because he's like kind of a soft-spoken, shy person in person, I think. And I think it was just that thing, like when you encounter someone who's so famous that you're just awestruck almost by it. Like there were like I was standing with Noel Clarke from Doctor Who, and Noel was just like, oh, that's Christopher Nolan. Yeah, and he went down the line to be introduced to people, and he was shaking everyone's hand. And then Jeff Boucher introduced him to me, and he's like, "Oh, and this is Ed Brubaker, the comic book writer." And Chris Nolan was like, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you." And he did the double handshake, and Jeff was like, "That's huge for him." I made Jeff give him some of my hardback criminal collections, and my friend Gabe does a lot of storyboards for Nolan. And he said when they were at the office downtown, he was in Nolan's office talking to him about a sequence for Inception or Batman, one of the Batman movies or something. And he saw on the shelf of his office that he had the criminal hardbacks. And I was like, that's the coolest thing in the whole world.
I'm done now.
Like I had a friend send Adam McKay a copy of Pulp, because I'm like, Pulp is, while it takes place in the 1930s, is so much in line with all of his own obsessions with the world right now that I'm like, I would just love him to read this. And I have a friend who works on all of his movies. And so he sent it to him, and I'm like, that's the biggest thrill in the world to know that one of my favorite filmmakers is going to read a book I did. Like that's, you know, I'm still such a fanboy on that level. Like I'll never lose that. I was a comic book nerd growing up. I mean, I got angry at a retcon and created the Winter Soldier. So
that's true. Who wrote that Nomad miniseries back in the 90s? Where he was riding.
I want to say Fabian Nessenza, maybe. He was going, it was like Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah, it was basically a Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
That cat must, as conflicted as you may feel about the Winter Soldier, that guy hates your fucking guts, man. You took his Bucky out of the equation.
Yeah, there's that. No, that's the other thing is like whenever you have those jobs too, you know that everybody who used to have that job is like, especially if you're doing well in it, they're like, God damn it. Like the greatest thing for me was to go to these conventions and meet the guys who I grew up being a fan of and find out some of them were reading my books. like Marv Wolfman, meeting Marv Wolfman and having him be like, oh, I really love what you're doing on, you know, Captain America or Daredevil, or Len Wein, like I kind of became friends with for a while. And, you know, it's just like Dwayne McDuffie came up to me at one point at a signing to tell me how much he loved my Captain America run, and that he thought I was like, you know, tops of the field in his, and this was when I would do a signing and 5 people would show up. And here's like one of the best writers of, you know, the generation, and also one of the guys from the animated, you know, stuff that did the best stuff for them. Because honestly, like those Batman animated cartoons brought me back to superhero comics. Like when I got offered, when Shrek was taking over Batman and he's like, do you want to write some Batman? I was like, I got no ideas for Batman. And then I went to a friend's house who had a VHS tape of like 20 episodes of the Batman animated show. And those things are so good. There's like, and they're also so aimed at adults and not children. Yeah. Like there's the one of the episode that really got me was like, he gets dosed by the Scarecrow and he has this horrifying acid flashback of watching his parents walk into a tunnel, and the tunnel becomes a gun barrel and a bullet shoots out of it, and then blood drips out of the barrel. And I was like, holy shit, they can do this? I remember calling up Shrek and I'm like, can I write the Batman animated comic? And he's like, no, I want you to write the real Batman comic. I was like, but I did eventually get to write one episode of one issue of that one. But yeah, that stuff, I still rate that stuff. I met Glenn Murakami on the street in Pasadena. He was just hanging out with Jaime Hernandez after they'd had lunch, and I saw Jaime and I'm like, hey. And then he introduced me and I was like, oh my God, Glenn Murakami. I'm just such a like nerd for that stuff. So, you know, it'd be great. Like to me, that would be a dream if Bruce Timm and those guys would do like a Gotham Central animated one, even more than like a TV show. Cause you know, TV shows, you know, it's a crapshoot whether they'll be any good or whether they'll adapt any of the stuff even, you know.
If they do that, I will cancel my HBO Max and then resubscribe just so that there's more money in the pipeline for Ed Brubaker.
I'm still logging in through my cable.
Ed, you based on chat, they love you, man. They love you spilling the tea. They love your work.
Oh, thanks.
They're like, I just bought Pulp. I just bought Criminal. A lot of sales going on.
Oh, thanks, man. That means the world to me. And yeah, I sent you the stuff. I got your mailing address now. I'll mail you a box of a lot of other hardbacks for you to figure out where to put in your house.
Oh,
or to just give to an assistant.
You know, look, my movies ain't working out so well anymore, so I go to eBay all the time to sell shit people give me. So please send me as many hard copies. If you're gonna sign them, just don't personalize them, Ed.
No. I'm not unwrapping them from the plastic, Kevin. I include a personalized note that I sign, but I'm not unwrapping I'm a man in his 50s now. I have high blood pressure. I fill out a FedEx envelope and that's about it. But it's so great for you guys to have me on. And honestly, like I told you, like I reviewed Clerks when it came out at the Seattle Film Fest years ago.
Get out of here for the stranger.
I was at this. Yeah, I was like a movie critic for Stranger. I got paid $25 to review Clerks that day. And it spoke to me so much coming because I am ex-retail. I worked comic store jobs. I worked at video store. The video store scene in Clerks, I still to this day, that's the most accurate video store experience of my. I watched that Blockbuster documentary and you're in it the other day and I thought, I always hated Blockbuster. Like I never actually went to one.
There was some lady who came after me on Twitter after that documentary and she was like, look at you, like reminiscing and championing the same video store that killed the mom and pop store. This Blockbuster killed RST. And like, I'm like, I wasn't sitting there sucking Blockbuster's dick as much as we were reminiscing about the video store experience.
Yeah.
It was couched in this, hey, this is the last Blockbuster. But man, you gotta be fucking carrying a torch of hate.
Yeah.
Like at this late stage in the game where you're like, lady, Blockbuster lost.
Yeah, Blockbuster lost big time.
Yeah,
that whole.
Let's give them their documentary.
I always went to the cool video, like Scarecrow video in Seattle, or like the one in the firehouse
video in New York City.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kim's Video. Yeah. We'd go there every time we go to a Marvel Summit. We would always end up there, and I'm buying, which was great because they always had next week's DVDs on sale early. So I was
broke street date all the time.
We don't need rules.
I mean, but they had to compete. But I loved that experience, and working at a video store, like I was that guy who, like, the video store job was the greatest job ever because your job was 4 movies. Like when you have a regular job, you're checking the minutes. You're like Paulie on The Sopranos having to like saw. You're like, it's got to have been 4 hours. Oh, it's been 8 minutes. But I would put on like 4 movies that I knew were, I would start with an R-rated because no one came in the first 2 hours except the guys returning porn. But I like so much of Clerks just like spoke to me. And I also, at that time, I'm like roughly the same age as you. I had the same kind of Hal Hartley obsession. And I could see that at the end of the movie. Like all that stuff spoke to me so much. So just to be invited on your guys' show is just such a thrill for me, honestly. And
this was a joy.
Also, your fans are, like real legit like fans of stuff. Like this isn't you guys don't come out here and just shit on stuff, except for Mark hating all the people scenes.
His reputation precedes him. You got to have a talk with him, man. He's got a lot of stuff.
It's what I do, man. It's just what I do.
He's got to be your Siskel.
True. I don't know which one I would be in that equation because they both picked on shit too.
They hated Sid and Nancy. I remember that.
I'm more like who's that critic nobody likes? The the Movie Minute guy or whatever the fuck. Who everyone's like, who is that? Like Paul Allen or something like that. I'm the critic that like every studio loves because like he'll always give you a quote. Don't matter what you make and shit like that.
Oh yeah, no, you tricked me into Star Wars movies that I hate.
There you go, kids. That's proof right there. Just because I like stuff that doesn't mean other people do.
Pitch man. I went to Star Wars Episode 3 so excited that this was going to be the greatest thing. The Star Wars trilogy is Star Wars, the Star Wars Holiday Special, and Empire Strikes Back. Yeah. And then Ewoks appeared and everything went bad until The Mandalorian.
Yeah, The Mandalorian saved the universe, for heaven's sakes.
It renewed my faith in Star Wars.
Right.
I gotta say, there's an episode of How I Met Your Mother that defines like how you can tell what age someone was when they first encountered Star Wars by whether they like the Ewoks or hate the Ewoks.
Right.
I was in like 11th grade. So I was like, I heard there was going to be a planet of Wookiees at one point, and then they changed it to teddy bears. And I was like, I want a planet of Wookiees.
That first thing was way better.
An army of Chewbacca's, but instead shrunken versions.
Yeah.
Teddy bears.
All right. Well, I should let you guys get to whatever next hour of your.
There ain't gonna be a next hour. You're almost the end of our show, my friend. I gotta go to sleep and wake up fucking 6 a.m. So.
Oh, dude, yeah, we gotta read like one more ad. And then we gotta.
You're gonna need some more clove cigarettes.
That's true. I will need another clove. Wink, wink. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for a great writer, a great storyteller, and a great spiller of the tea. I'm sure there are a million journalists right now feverishly typing about you and the Winter Soldier and stuff.
My lawyer was like, don't say anything.
You got it, boss.
Yeah,
I wrote down a list of all my recent pop culture watches for us to discuss instead of this. I would just like to point out AP Bio, if you guys have never watched that. The 3rd season is existential amazingness.
The one that's on Peacock?
The Peacock only season is levels up of just insanity. 2nd season of Solar Opposites.
Amazing.
Yeah, that couldn't believe how good it was. Yeah. Okay. And the documentary about the Go-Go's, well worth watching.
Oh, is that out now? What was it, on Showtime or something?
It's on streaming, I think. Or it might be on Showtime. Yeah, it's just called the Go-Go's. But yeah, that was amazing.
The trailer for it looked really good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were messed up, and you want to hear about it.
Look at that. Not only did you get comics history talk, you got some Winter Soldier inside dope. Ed just gave you some tips, 3 hot tips on stuff you could be watching right now. You're useful, man.
Thank you. Well, I thought we'd just talk about a bunch of pop culture. I had no idea it would be so much about me.
That's what it has to be. Give it up for the great Ed Brubaker. Ed, we'll have you back on very, very soon.
Oh, thank you. Anytime. I'm always home now. Strangely.
Aren't we all?
Indeed. Be good, Ed.
All right. Thanks.
Holy cats, man. Like, what wonderful, wonderful dish, let's be honest, but just great storytelling, man. I love on this show when we deep dive into the actual world of comics, because we always kind of blow the movies and the TV shows, but the source material for all this is the books. It's always wonderful when we had Kirkman on. These are Kirkman, Brubaker, dyed in the wool comics folks who are like, been in the trenches for years and years. And now they're seeing their stuff realized on the big screens and the small screens and stuff like that. And in the case of our good friend Kirkman, becoming literal billionaires. Yes. And in the case of Brubaker, not so much.
Right. But also, like, despite both of their success in other media, like you mentioned, he wrote on Westworld, the Nicholas Winding Refn show that he did, Too Old to Die Young, on Amazon. Like, he's a legit television writer and creator, but he always comes back to comics. I think that's the thing that we learned from both of those dudes, is that there's something special about comics that even once you play in those other media fields, you return back home.
And I love that he's doing, like, his idea of a comic is not just like, hey man, he's Captain America and shit. He's literally doing a comic about like a surfing fixer.
Yes.
Where it's just like, that counts. And he's like, fuck yeah, it counts, man. And he's smart because, like, somebody out there is going to be like, that's a TV show. And then fucking bam, off it goes and stuff. Boy, he was great. Mark brought in Brubaker, so fucking great catch, Mark.
Well, thank you.
I was just going to chime in and say, I know this isn't a sports podcast, but in sports, you sign a 7-year contract when you're 20 years old. And if you throw 100 touchdowns in your first year or hit 100 home runs or whatever it is, you get a new contract the next year. It's not like, well, you're stuck. Like, they sign you and they get you more. So in sports, it's totally acceptable to get paid and renegotiate. But in comics and in writing, the writers are just like, well, you shouldn't have signed that contract when you were a kid, which I think is a little not quite fair for creative people, but it's still, in sports, that's changed. So hopefully, the creative industry will follow suit soon.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, work for hire will always be work for hire, which means, like, if you go in to write Superman and they make a Superman movie, like, you don't get a piece of that just because you wrote Superman. And so, like, yeah, he didn't invent Bucky. And so it's hard for him to argue that he deserves a giant share of every Winter Soldier dollar. But to his point, it's Disney, and they've made like $6 billion or so, either directly off of that character or in movies featuring that character. And so the idea that there should be some semblance of equity, or at the very least, hey man, just break them off a little something.
Break them off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. You know what I'm saying? Like, happy wife, happy life, kids. Like, it's that simple. It's just, what do I know? I don't run a giant corporation and stuff, but, like, just, you got like, when did he say he created the character?
Man, that would have been like early 2000s, I think. Like,
and like, again, we know that, of course, it's Bucky, and Bucky pre-existed, Ed, and the Winter Soldier, but, like, he added this dimension and created this persona that has been insanely viable. So much so that, like, there's a whole TV show about it right now on Disney. Very expensive TV show, I might add. So yeah, it just feels like, if I was in charge, I'd break people off. Just anytime I was doing something with a character, particularly like a character that somebody who's alive created in the last like 20, 30 years or whatever, I'd be like, let's just give him some loot, man. Like, why not? Like, it just good makes everyone happy. Like, you know, rather than him out there in the world talking about like, yeah, man, they don't break off any money. He'd be out there singing the praises. I shall point out though, that even though, you know, Ed had some issues with, you know, hey man, where's my check? He's clearly a big fan of everyone involved. Like, you know, name checked Feige and fucking Russo brothers and our boys, screenwriters, Marcus and McFeely and stuff like that. So it's not like he's sitting around grousing like, I hate all these people and stuff. He really seems to enjoy and like all the people involved. So, you know, I don't know. Hopefully, I doubt this show is going to make a difference, but hopefully somewhere down the road, like, you know, somebody's like, let's open up the books.
Right. You know, it does remind me of the, you know, when Star Wars was a hit, despite the fact that, you know, Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher didn't have like great contracts because it was a smallish movie, you know, and they didn't have a share of the gross. 20th Century Fox eventually just broke them off, you know, knowing full well we're going to need them for the sequels, right? Like, it'll be easier for us to negotiate for 2 and 3 if we just make them feel better about 1. And so, like, didn't have to, but gave them giant checks. And like, it just greases the wheels. It makes things easier, especially once you're making money hand over fist.
Let's take this opportunity to, you know, I mean, it's 10:53. Like, I don't think we're gonna do like how many news stories you got? A few?
You know, we got a few.
They wait till Saturday or Sunday when we do this again.
Some of them might.
We gotta talk about our other sponsor.
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes, they've been waiting forever. And then folks, it's the good folks at Blue Chew. We've been talking about Blue Chew, man. You know what Blue Chew is all about, kids. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. And it's been a hell of a year. Personally, I feel like I've aged 12 years over the last 12 months. And if you're like me, you're feeling your age more than you used to, kids, especially in the boudoir, the bedroom, as they say, not in France. It's time to snap out of it, kids. Spring is here, and it's time to get sprung with Blue Chew. Sprung like that. Blue Chew, you're sitting there going, what is it? This sounds like a good deal for me. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form, kids. You're chewing it.
Yum, 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 yum.
And it's at a fraction of the damn cost, man. Blue Chew's tablets help men achieve harder, stronger erections. Mighty are their erections, for heaven's sakes, to combat all forms of erectile dysfunction. Mark?
Blue Chew is an online prescription service, so no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations about why your thing isn't working the way you want it to be working, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And it ships right to your door in a discreet package. Process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll get your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online.
Now, I know some people out there are like, what does this have to do with me? I'm a comic book fan, for heaven's sakes. I don't need to know about erectile dysfunction. Well, I'll tell you right now, this is how you relate to it. Ready? You know how Our Man has to take a pill and then he gets his power? You know how Underdog takes a pill and he gets his power? This blows it away, kids, because you ain't eating no pill. You're chewing. You're blue chewing, for heaven's sakes.
So we got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use their promo code FATMAN at checkout. Just pay $5 in shipping. So that's bluechew.com, BLUECHEW.com, promo code FATMAN to get your first month free. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast.
We thank the good folks at Blue Chew for looking out for us here on Fat Man Beyond. So do us a favor, kids. If you're out there and you're like, I don't know what the fuck's going on with my boners, give them a goddamn try, man. Blue Chew knows what's going on with your boners, and they're going to give you something to chew, and then life gets better. Then you're doing the things that you want to do with your wiener.
It doesn't have to be hard unless you want it to.
Look at that. That's nice. You writing taglines as you're modern day fucking Don Draper, for heaven's sake. BlueChew.com, ladies and gentlemen. Go there. Check them out. They see it right there on the screen, man. Send them your patronage if you're one of those people that has a dick, because they helped us out. Let's help them out in return.
Indeed.
Tell you right now, the moment that I'm like, it ain't working, guess where I'm going? BlueChew.com. Okay, let's let's look at the chat. Like right now, Sam Gall movie review says news and Q&A, please don't leave us yet. Let's hear. You got the news in front of you. Do the news stories that like are immediate and save the ones that can wait until the weekend for the next show, which is coming up very soon. I assume we'll do this Saturday or Sunday of this weekend. So
indeed,
it'll be less than 7 days till the next episode. But see if you can pull anything that's
the one that really felt like we needed to talk about it this week, because it's already getting a little bit old, is we finally got, after what feels like anywhere between 9 and 12 months, we've been witness to Ray Fisher's sort of ongoing campaign against both Warner Brothers and Joss Whedon, and for everything that happened with the Whedon cut of Justice League. And we've all been wondering like what his specific allegations were. And this past week, he finally came clean, and he sat down with Kim Masters at the Hollywood Reporter and gave his first.
Kim Masters, ladies and gentlemen.
Great Kim Masters.
Wonderful journalist, and has been for years and years and years.
And told his side of the story, which ultimately detailed the ways in which he felt both emboldened by Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio to help create a Victor Stone that was going to be the heart and soul of the movie, and that was going to help talk about things like, what it's like to be, a black man in America. He was invited into the process because both of them realized that they were not black men in America, and Ray might have some insight into that. And he felt very good about the version that fans would ultimately see in the Snyder cut. And then details the ways in which Joss Whedon then sort of detonated all of that, from things like inviting the actors to read his version of the script and then give their thoughts. And of course, by thoughts, he didn't want to hear very much of anything. His sort of operations on set requiring, him to say lines that he did not want to say. Specifically, the fact that Cyborg has a catchphrase and no other character does, and he felt a little bit more, minstrelsy than he was hoping. And then basically just the callousness with which he felt treated, both in the creative process and on the set, which he sort of was quiet about as the movie came out because he thought that that's what needed to happen. And then details his ongoing experiences with Warner Brothers in trying to get an investigation mounted that would both bring these things to light and hopefully change things in the future for other actors and writers and directors and people of color within the business. I'm glad he finally told the story. And I think it's noble of him that he chased it down for this long. And for me, like we had heard, especially in the last 3 or 4 months, a lot more of the Joss Whedon stuff had come out. And so we were already primed with maybe he isn't the best dude to work for. Not on a set, not on a staff, and did not seem to have, the best interests, at the very least, of Ray Fisher in his heart when he was making that movie. The thing for me that was the most illuminating was all of the Warner Brothers stuff around it. The way that they sort of conducted the investigation, which didn't feel like it was with sort of full heart, and they're not, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose about it. you know, the thing that I think we all need to realize, and we started to realize it when the Me Too movement began, is that corporate HR departments are not in the business of investigating and telling the truth. They're in the business of sort of shielding the company from litigation. And so, like, they did not seem to be as aggressively pursuing the truth as Ray hoped that they would be, because that's not their job. You know, and I think that if anybody came out of this worse off than they went in, it's some of the revelations about Jeff Johns.
Yeah, he trended for 2 days on Twitter.
Yeah,
and not for a positive thing.
Not for a positive thing. I think the thing that that most people dug into was that at one point, the star of Bridgerton, Regé-Jean Page, had tested for the lead of Krypton.
Oh, by the way, I don't watch Bridgerton, but he was amazing on SNL. I thought he was great.
Like super charming. Like I haven't seen Bridgerton either, but like super charming, like down for anything, like handsome as fuck. And he tested for the role of Segel, which ultimately went to Cameron Cuff, who's on the show. Lovely guy. He's a friend and a top man. But the reason why, according to Johns, was that nobody wanted a black Superman's grandfather. The creators of the show did. Like they were down to cast. They were down to be very sort of openly diverse and inclusive with it all. But Johns, who was overseeing the project, said Superman could not have a black grandfather. Which, yeah, he could.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, he could. Like I remember, and then I'm picking fights. I'm on record. You can watch somewhere on this channel. Me loving the Star Wars movie. People are like split on Ryan's movie. What was it?
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi and stuff. And I took a lot of shit for liking it because some people didn't like it and whatnot. But I remember, and I think it was a conversation that you and I had. Like, you know, the moment where, you know, Luke can't go to the fucking salt planet because his X-Wing is in the water and he's got no R2 unit and so forth and so on. But, you know, it's like, but sure. But if you really wanted him to do it, like, nothing's holding you back. Like, he can magic his way there. You know, like, there's a zillion fixes for that. If you really want to do it, you can't just like rest it on like, well, there's the wall. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, according to Johns' rep, he believed fans expected the character to look like young Henry Cavill.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, they're not even connected. It's not even like this was a Snyderverse show or something like that.
No, I mean, I think that maybe in his mind, the Superman of the era was Henry Cavill. And so if you're going to look for that character's grandfather, you expect to see a white dude who looks like Henry Cavill.
I hate to be this guy, but like, it's fucking outer space on a different planet where like they don't necessarily work by the same rules as we do here and shit. So you can literally do anything you want. Yes. And B, all this shit, I like, spoilers, kids, all this shit's made up anyway. So, you know, fucking, you can do whatever you want. So like, yeah, that answer didn't really track.
No,
I guarantee you, if they were casting Krypton now, and what's his name? How do you say his name?
Regé-Jean Page.
And if he comes through the door and says like, I fancy playing, you know, fucking Superman's grandfather, in a heartbeat, they hire that cat because he blew up from Bridgerton and stuff.
You know, and like he could have blown up from Krypton. Who knows?
Yeah.
And also, like, Superman's got 2 sets of grandparents, so there's nobody saying that the other set couldn't be, you know, white as snow. And like this set, there's a black dude in there who is also not like the Wesley Snipes of black dudes. Like, he is not the darkest black dude you've ever seen. He's.
I'm sorry, I have to look around and see if that's okay to say. That made me feel very. What do you say? What is that? Is that a is Wesley Snipes a standard of some sort? I'm unaware.
Wesley Snipes is one of the darkest men to be a legit movie star. Like, just screen tone wise, like 9 times out of 10, your romantic leads, your action leads are going to be like, and even Eddie Murphy was pretty dark for that, time period. But like, they're going to be a little bit more mocha and less dark chocolate. But Reggae Jean Page, like that dude, sure, like 100%, I see him having a white grandson. Wesley Snipes, that's a pretty intense, drop in the bucket if you're counting that way.
Look at that. We learned some shit tonight, kid.
At 11:06 at Fat Man After Dark, we're dropping some science.
Now we're getting real. Now the show's really taking off. Yeah, that was so that's what they went after Jeff for. Did they go after him for something about the Ray Fisher story as well?
I mean, a little bit, Jeff.
Oh, yes, because I remember Jeff was like, don't play it like Frankenstein, play it more like Quasimodo. Like,
right.
And he did the hump walk, and Ray was like, he's doing this servile position thing in front of me, telling me to play him as like this broken monster and shit like that, who everybody likes and stuff. And it was just kind of tone deaf, I guess.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, like, why is anybody but the director giving, even the replacement director, why is anyone but the director giving an actor notes about how to play a part? Like,
yeah. I mean, it all seems like the worst version of this scenario is what played out, which is you've got a producer giving notes to actors, circumventing directors. You've got directors replacing other directors who don't really have in mind what those initial actors had in mind for their characters. I think that, Jeff Johns is an incredibly talented comic book writer. He is, bar none, one of the top 10 to kind of ever do the job.
Very prolific as well.
Incredibly prolific.
Truly, loves the field, loves these characters.
Loves the field, loves the characters, has catapulted, has been a pillar for DC.
Also Comics. The guy who literally put Cyborg into the Justice League, of removed Martian Manhunter and moved Cyborg out of Teen Titans into the Justice League.
Yeah, and so there's no quibbling that part of his bona fides. It just seems that as an executive, perhaps he was out of his depth, or at the very least asked to do too many things at the same time, all of which might have required a level of finesse that he wasn't prepared to give. So yeah, I don't know, but at the very least, now we know the root cause of Ray Fisher's campaign. Hopefully change comes on the other side of it. Hopefully everybody realizes that, there's a better way to handle this. And there would seem to have been a better way to handle it all along. And I will also say that part of me looks at the things that Ray Fisher had to deal with and is like, yeah, I mean, sounds like you had a bad boss. And honestly, we've all had bad bosses. Lots of us have had worse bosses. There was a Chris Terrio piece that came out that Anthony Bresnikan did it for Vanity Fair, where he came clean about his process working with both Zach and how amazing he thought it was, and then watching what Joss ended up doing to his script and why people hated that movie and how he understands it and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, no, dude, for sure, this was a bad process. But this is also not the first time a writer's been fucked over by Hollywood on a movie. Where, the studio has run roughshod over somebody's vision and the other side was not great. This is not a unique experience, like on either end, either as a writer or as a performer. So to blow it, to make it this cause célèbre, and like this is as bad as it was, like doesn't sound awesome, doesn't sound like a good time, but it also doesn't sound like, racism, like awful shit. And, for anybody who's, been in this business for a while, any business for a while, I'm sure they've got worse stories to tell. But I'm glad that it's all out, and I'm glad that hopefully we can move past it. And I'm hoping that all the parties involved sort of learned a bit better or a bit more how to conduct themselves in ways that do not require year-long campaigns and independent HR investigations and, publicist exclamations of innocence and or lack of guilt.
Here in chat, Ad Vexen says Krypton had Superman grandpa dating Zod's mom, who was black, but the show ripped them apart. I didn't even know that part of the storyline, but I did hear like last week when that story broke, and a few people in chat have pointed out that I didn't go deep on Krypton. Zod, there was a Zod grandparent that was like Michael Shannon.
Yeah, Colin Salmon, the British actor of African descent, played that character, and it's great. Like, bring me more, Zods. And I think again the writers and producers of that show were committed to sort of diversifying what had been a very monochrome look at an alien race. I just think they wanted to make it front and center, and it ended up being a little bit on the periphery.
What other news we got?
Let's see if we're gonna hit these bad boys quick. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is joining the cast of Indiana Jones 5, to be directed by James Mangold, who's taking over for Steven Spielberg.
She's a good ad. Is she going to turn and address the camera throughout this movie?
I hope so. I hope there's a hot priest for her to fawn over.
You're like, Indiana is off his banana, and then back in the scene and shit.
Like,
that
Indiana,
was a really bad version of like the writing that won her multiple awards and Emmys. Clearly,
indeed. I have a feeling she'll just be turning to the camera asking what happened to Mutt all the time. Didn't you have a son?
Or talking about how we should forget Crystal Skull.
Yeah, like didn't you make another movie? No, this is number 4.
I'm going to call this. I don't think this is a hot take, and I don't think I'm Nostradamus, but this movie is going to be amazing. Mangold doesn't miss. He's a really wonderful filmmaker, and he has a treasure that he knows is a high bar to clear. Like, you're sequelizing Spielberg.
Yes.
Like, the only guy who's ever touched that franchise, aside from Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. So I don't think there's any way he loses, and him casting her is a really good indicator of that.
And I also think that he has to understand the responsibility of telling what is probably going to be Harrison Ford's final Indiana Jones movie. And so, like, you've got to bring it home. Like, you're the closer. No pressure, but don't fuck it up.
Do you think he feels the way about Indiana Jones that he did about like Han Solo, where he's like, I'm doing it once and kill me and then I'm done? Like, does he feel that same way about Indiana Jones, or?
I don't know. I mean, he seems to come back for all of them. Like, no matter what, he's like, all right, I got the hat and I got the whip. I don't know if the pants still fit, but I don't know why suddenly my Harrison Ford is Obama. I've got the whip. I've got my hat. So let's go and I don't know, what are we getting this time? Is it a crystal skull? Is it some kind of arc? Whatever you want, I'll go get it. Let's go.
Even if they wanted to bring Mutt back, and nobody's crying for that, it'd be difficult, right? Because it's Shia LaBeouf.
It is Shia LaBeouf.
And he's not anybody that anybody wants to cast right now.
I don't think anybody's clamoring for more Mutt.
I guess so. How just like in Temple of Doom, he didn't mention Marion. And in, Last Crusade, he didn't reference fucking Billy or whatever her name was. He could just as easily not reference Mutt at all.
Yep.
Temple of Doom, though, is a prequel to Raiders. So that's why there's no Marion reference.
True. But there's also no Marion in Last Crusade.
There's also what?
No Marion references in Last Crusade.
Well, because Elsa's running around with him. He doesn't want to talk about the old fling when the new one he's trying to pick up.
But to be fair, JC, I want to correct your correction. Even though Temple of Doom is a prequel, he knew Marion when she was a kid. So I believe when he Marion, which is creepy in and of itself, and I hope they address that in the new movie. But he knew her when she was younger, you know, when she was like, I was a child, I was in love. So he might have known her before he met. What was her name? Billy? No, it's a guy's name in Temple of Doom.
Yeah. Elsa Schneider is the character name.
That's in Last Crusade.
Willie Scott.
Willie Scott.
That's it. So
mostly a Billy.
He probably met Marion and had his dalliance with Marion, which now that I think about it, when she was like, I was a child.
She's 15 years old.
Does she say that?
No, but the story notes for Raiders, which is a document you can find online, which is just it's a conversation transcribed between Lucas and Spielberg and Lawrence Kasdan. And they're discussing like basically the entirety of the story of the movie. And at some point, you know, Lucas was pushing for Marion to be as young as like 13.
But not in the movie, but like in the movie history.
No, like that was the version of like when she says I was young and I was in love, he was pushing that they had a relationship when she was like 13 years old. And both Spielberg and Kasdan are like, no, you can't do that. And so I think the compromise was like she's later in her teens, but still below the age of consent.
I mean, what? Still? Like they're like, the compromise is she's young. She just ain't that young. We're not creepy.
Right. We're not like really creepy. We're just like Lolita creepy.
Wow, man. Like George Lucas, who always comes across as the most mild-mannered guy in interviews and stuff like that. Like there's that weird story detail. Then there's the whole like he's gonna kiss his sister. Weird story detail. Like,
yeah, but we're just gonna push past it. It's fine.
Sometimes, kids, you need a second draft. You need it.
You need another person. You need a note.
Yes.
Get an independent.
It's okay to listen to some damn notes. What else we got?
All right, we'll do one more story and then we'll bounce out of here. You've heard of Stephen King's Dollar Babies, yes?
Yes, this is the idea that like this was a legendary for film school students. I even knew about this when we at the Vancouver Film School, a school for which I'm now a creative ambassador. Thank you very much. VFS.com.
Ooh.
In any event, free ad for my friends in Vancouver Film School who taught me how to make clerks. Take that for what it's worth. My preamble was so long, I forgot what we were talking about. What was it?
Stephen King's Dollar Babies.
Thank you. Even in film school, neophyte filmmaker like myself heard of this because this goes back a long time ago.
Yes.
Like not a recent thing, goes back to like the late 80s, early 90s. Bunch of film school kids start writing Stephen King going like, hey man, can I adapt a story for this? It's just for my school, like please. And so he came up with this brilliant and very generous system where anybody can option a Stephen King thing to shoot for $1.
Yes.
But the moment it became like profitable, if you sold it or something like that, then it's a different discussion. But if you were just making it for the academic pursuit of I'm trying to tell a story, may I use your story to make a movie to see if I know how to make a movie? He very generously was like, yeah, for the price, low price of $1, I'll give you the rights to make a film school version or something of my material.
Indeed. And so it's been a thing happening for decades and lots of filmmakers have gotten this. I mean, I think even, why am I losing his name now? Shawshank Redemption guy.
Frank Darabont.
Frank Darabont got his start like making a Dollar Baby.
Anytime, I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. Anytime someone says Frank Darabont in this world, I light a clove cigarette. So go ahead.
Clove it up. So now there is, on the heels of this sort of initiative going on for years, a Stephen King Rules Dollar Baby Film Festival, which is a free virtual event where attendees can watch upwards of 25 of these Dollar Babies. From April 23rd to April 25th, if you go to barkerstreetcinema.ca, it's run by a couple of very nice Canadians, a fellow named James Douglas and Norm Coyne, who also runs the Northern Fan Con convention that's brought both Kevin and I up to do a Fat Man in Prince George, Canada. They're the ones who are organizing it all. And so if you go to that, barkerstreetcinema.ca, all the information is there. You can go on Vimeo or YouTube and watch all of these movies starting from April 23rd to 25th. And I think, like, fuck it. Like, as a dude who is embarking on making a short, it is always good to see places where people can watch things like this. Won't cost you a dime. So they don't have to give Stephen King more than his $1. And frankly, he doesn't need it. But just to see various interpretations of Stephen King works from people who just love the stuff.
It must be thrilling for him too, now, to be able to like put it all together and be like, look at all of them. Look at all. I mean, he's seen many interpretations of his work over the years. Sometimes he hates the interpretation or not into it. But like, you know, gifting these stories into the hands of budding filmmakers or budding storytellers, you're getting a passionate storyteller taking on that material. So I would imagine like it must feel, I don't think he, you know, can Ed Brubaker it where he's like, I'm not going to watch that. You know, like he's got to be like, oh those are my kids. I want to see how they did, what they did, man. I want to see like what their version of Randall Flagg looks like, or I want to see how they adapted Apt Pupil in a different way, or any of the different seasons, like short stories and stuff. So yeah, that's good for him. This motherfucker is like so influential. Like, think about it. Stephen King feels like he's been around since I've been like born, but he started like kind of like while I was alive. It became like a cultural phenomenon like in the late 70s, I want to say late 70s, early 80s. So he's been, for lack of a better description, I mean, other than prolific, famous, one of the world's most famous writers of our lifetimes and stuff. For as long as, you know, I've been cognizant of pop culture. And to be this guy who's like written so much material that you're like, yeah, if you want to adapt one of my many fucking things, you know, send me $1 and we're good.
Yeah, fill out a form, make it all legal, nicey nice, go off and do a thing.
Yeah.
Like if you sell it, then, you know, there's more contracts and more negotiations to be had because it's a marketplace and I want what's of value. But I'm never gonna stop a guy's dream. You know, like, and I always appreciated that. I remember talking to Lin-Manuel Miranda. I interviewed him once, and I asked him about high school productions of stuff like, you know, In the Heights and Hamilton. And he's like, I am never going to stand in the way of a kid who wants to make something. He's like, so if you got a song in your heart and what you want to do is get a bunch of friends together and do a local production of this, I'm never going to get in the way. Kids should be allowed to be able to do this stuff, you know, and I don't care who's in it. You know, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. It's like, if you're a legit theater company and you're mounting this stuff, you cast the shit right. Like Hamilton is the way Hamilton is and it is what it is because of the intentional way we went about casting those roles. But if you're like a 15-year-old kid with a bunch of friends who just wants to put on something to raise money for a car wash or whatever, go to town. Like I'm not going to be the dude to stand in the way. So for Stephen King to also say, yeah, no, I can sell this to United Artists tomorrow for, you know, $200,000 and then, you know, $1 million if they make a movie, or give it to this kid for $1. And maybe this kid will grow up to become Frank Darabont and then ultimately make the best versions of my stuff. And if not, then a kid like indulged his dream to make a movie, a Stephen King movie of his very own.
I bet you the way to his heart would be if you were like, Dear Mr. King, I would like to sequelize The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill. And I want you to play the son you never knew that your character had. And so he gets a second bite at the apple to play his creep show part. Because I'm sure he's watched it for years now and been like, I could have done that part better. I might have, you know, instead of like, he might have chosen a different delivery for, oh, meteor shit. You know, something like that. He's had many years to look at that performance. I'm sure he would like to modulate it, you know, just a thought. Who knows?
Yeah, just, you know, maybe. Who can tell?
Good for him, man.
Yeah.
Good for him.
So yeah, barkerstreetcinema.ca.
Where is
That's
it?
barkerstreetcinema.ca.
Wow. Go take part, kids. It's
Indeed.
free. Don't
cost nothing.
It's now, the show has hit the 3-hour mark, kids.
Yep.
Normally we would go into Q&A, but like I gotta go sleep because I gotta be on a set very early tomorrow morning.
I gotta go to sleep.
But should we do at least one question?
Whatever you feel, my friend.
JC, Bamf in here and join us.
Okay. I have some good questions. Do we want?
You got to pick the best.
Oh man.
Yeah, pressure's on, my friend. Now, to be fair, we wouldn't know what the best is, so you could pick anyone, and we'd be like, "Ooh, that's good."
It could be.
Or we'll be like, "That was the best."
All right. So we've had a pretty crazy, serious issue-based show. So let's do something silly for Q&A. Sir Tino wants to know if you had to make a porn with any Marvel Universe character, who would it be, and what would the climax of the story be like?
This feels like one of those questions going to get us into trouble. Well, okay, make it a porno. Reed and Sue Richards. Reed for the obvious reasons. It just keeps stretching. It just keeps going. And Sue, because you can't see her, so it would not be objectifying a woman in pornography.
Okay, so then what's the climax?
He comes, Mark. That's how sex ends. I don't know if you know this or not, but that's the hot part, because since she's invisible, you see it inside. Like you see him just like bust a nut in the air that instead of hitting the ground, just floats in the air.
Like, what is that? Well, Jesus, Johnny, those are fallopian tubes.
Yeah, and then he can teach people, medicine and shit. He's
Ben Grimm's downstairs, and he's like, I thought I was rock hard.
JC, ladies and gentlemen. JC bamfing in with a closer like that, and then bamfing out like he's fucking George Costanza. Like, I'm done. Good night here.
Yeah, I thought I was rock hard. BlueChew.com. And then out he goes.
BlueChew.com. All right, Mark, who are you putting in a porn? Who are you putting in the prawns?
I sort of feel like if it hasn't happened already, there probably needs to be, a Spider-Man Gwen Stacy MJ thwip. There's just fucking white shit flying everywhere.
And also they do it upside down, right?
A lot of fucking like bouncing and swinging and green screening and like, what's on those windows? Is Spider-Man in town again? And just jizzing all over fucking Madison Avenue. That's where I go. I go the blonde and the brunette and the web slinger. They gotta start slow though, man. They're in college, these kids, right? They're all in Empire State University. Yeah.
And she's gotta be like, you can't go right to the sex, Mark. You gotta remember these characters, they were written in the 60s and shit like that. So there was you gotta go up the petting ladder. So that way we get the scene where Mary Jane says to Spider-Man as she, gives him his first hand job. Peter Parker, mind you, not Spider-Man. We'll have a separate storyline with Spider-Man and stuff. But the line would be like, face it, Tiger, you hit the jerk pot. And then, I'm sorry, I know that was a world of setup. A lot of shoe leather to get to where we're going on that joke, but I think the destination might have been worth it.
Yeah. See, I would have gone like, the Peter's in college, fucking super nerd. And then, the climactic scene is the three-way between Peter and Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy. And then she knocks on the door. It's like, face the tiger, you hit the jackpot. And then Gwen Stacy walks in, and then it's like everybody's getting it on. And then, of course, you get your Spider-Man Black Cat stuff because you got to get some Black Cat in there too because, you know, these costumes got to be coming off.
But it's Parents' Weekend at college, and so they have to keep it hidden from Aunt May.
Well, there's your scene where Aunt May is fucking somebody.
Norman Osborn.
Yep.
I like it. And then Peter comes to the conclusion in the third act, if you've even made it that far. Most people in the first 10 minutes.
Third act. But it's 40 minutes long.
The third act, Peter comes to the conclusion, with great penis comes great responsibility.
That's the name of the movie. Peter comes to a conclusion.
No, the name of the movie is Peter Tingle. All right, that was pretty good. You know what? Let's do another question while we're here.
Okay.
You just go home on that. It was such a great game ender, but now I'm having a good time. I'm like, let's hear another one.
I know. I love Kev's like, listen, all right, we're not doing just one news story. All right, what more news do you got? I will do all the news.
Do you have any more porno questions, JC? That really brought me to life.
We'll do one question. That's fucking. Let's all do all three questions.
I got a weed question. Sam Gall Movie Reviews wanted to know what comic book character's life would improve by smoking weed, and what character's life would totally fall apart if they smoked weed. So if it was Popeye and he eats spinach, that's what character would have weed as his spinach?
That's not the way I read that question. I don't think you need to bring Popeye in as an analogy. What hero would benefit from weed, correct?
Correct.
And then what hero would be diminished by weed?
Mm-hmm.
I would say Batman would definitely fucking benefit from some weed, man. Like, just, you know, like, my parents are dead. But you know what? All parents die, don't they? You know?
Second life, man.
Yeah. It's what they did with their lives when they were here, and what they did was me, and I'm beautiful. He would benefit from weed. Who would fall apart from weed? You Mark, you do who would benefit while I think of my who would fall apart.
My first instinct was Doctor Strange, except I'm 100% sure he's already smoking weed. Like, there's no way he's not astral projecting thanks to the addition of some cannabis into his system. So then I go Daredevil. Like, I feel like pain management is a good reason for that dude to just like, listen, all right, I know all of this hurts. All of it hurts. I'm just a fucking dude who can maybe see some shit without seeing some shit. I'd like to smoke that away, if that's all right. I can't get drunk. I can't get high on like pills and shit. I gotta do natural because I gotta be on the go. So yeah, I'm going Daredevil.
You know who shouldn't smoke weed? Professor X. Guy, he's got too much access to too many minds. So if he gets a harsh buzz, if something harsh is his mellow, we're all fucked. Especially if he's wearing Cerebro.
Bro, Cerebro. No.
He's like, I'm gonna put on Cerebro and smoke this shit. And then he's just like, what am I doing wrong? What the fuck? And then we all feel his bummer.
I go the Flash. I feel like the Flash is not a dude that you want to slow down with, you know. And he needs to be a little bit on edge. He needs to be a little bit bouncy and poppy. And yeah, you can't mellow that dude out. Otherwise it's like, what's the fucking rush, man? Like, why? Although now I desperately want to see like Chung as the Flash. Hey, man.
He's not here, man.
What?
Barry's not here. The bonus for extra credit, I would say Aquaman and/or Submariner, because you can't light a joint in the ocean. It's impossible. In the ocean, on the surface, you might be able to, but down below, man, they'd be sitting there like, damn it. So that would ruin their day, to say the very least. Very fun question. All right, we got to get a third one, and we're so close.
Might as well.
I had Hakai Gonzalez in chat say Green Lantern would not be good on weed.
Hey, let me tell you something. Having seen like every Green Lantern cartoon growing up, all he ever did was a giant race car or a giant baseball mitt. So he would have benefited from some fucking weed. Like, let's be honest, Hal Jordan is a test pilot, which is great and very brave, but like, they're not known to be the most creative people in the world. Like, yeah, maybe creative in how they maneuver a plane, but it's not like Hal Jordan wrote children's books for years before he became a test pilot. So he had this massive imagination or anything. It's always like, I don't know, a giant baseball mitt. World's most powerful fucking weapon, fired by imagination. And it's a series of giant baseball mitts and fucking race cars. So I, for one, would appreciate a stoner Green Lantern who'd be like, giant vagina with tentacles, man. H.R. Geiger style.
Did they ever do like some 60s set Green Lantern issue where he dropped acid? And then like suddenly it's the fucking like yellow submarine just all up in the shit, but green.
I think they haven't yet, but I think you just pitched it.
Sounds like Grant Morrison would be a great writer for that one.
Yes.
Well, don't steal his sunshine. Marc Bernardin can be the great writer for that as well. Don't be giving it to Grant Morrison. He doesn't get all the weird stories. Marc is the writer for
I can do weird. I say when, I say who.
There's another shirt for your fucking t-shirt store. I can do weird.
I can do weird all by myself.
All right, what's the third?
Let's see. Do you want to do a silly one or a more serious one?
Oh, that's not too serious. It's the end of the show. Don't send everyone home in a bummer, man.
Pedro Luna earlier, very start of the show, asked a question about the super soldier serum that I had misread as, if you could give the super soldier serum to anyone from Cheers, who would it be?
Wait, how did you misread that? Well, what was the misreading?
It said if you could give it to anyone in real life, who would it be? Cheers. But the chat was scrolling so quick, so I thought it said if you could give it to anyone from Cheers. And
you know what? You get co-writing credit on that question because that is a much better question.
I liked that one better.
Anyone from Cheers.
Let's fucking do this, kids. We're legit going to try to figure out which one of the Cheers cast. And yes, it is the year 2021. We're going to try to figure out which one of the Cheers cast would be benefit from the super soldier serum.
Okay.
Call your parents and tell them we're talking about Cheers. Okay, going through the whole because it was Boston. Sam Malone does not need the super soldier serum.
No, he was already a pitcher. He's got it all.
Diane Chambers does not need the super soldier serum. She's a brain.
Right. Rebecca
is a mess. Don't ever give her the super soldier serum.
I already know who my pick is.
Me too. And I think I bet you, let's say at the same time, count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Woody.
Cliff.
What?
Yes.
Cliff, what are you, nuts?
Cliff is a man in uniform. He's a soldier, damn it.
It just, all it does is make what's there bigger. It accentuates what's there. So all you get out of a super soldier serum with Cliff is endless fucking stories and factoids.
How is that a bad thing?
They're weaponized, Mark.
It may save the U.S. Postal Service, though, if Cliff gets it. He could deliver all of Boston's
Cliff is a man who operates his life by a code. Neither rain nor sleet nor dead of night will stay that messenger on his appointed tasks. That motherfucker becomes the super soldier of mail delivery people.
You guys are out of your minds. It's fucking Woody, bro. Woody. This simple reason. The super soldier serum, it's not about being a good soldier, but a good man. And Woody is a good man, clueless, but good, pure of heart. I mean, you're not going to give it to fucking Norm.
Mm-mm.
Although I'm sure Vera would have appreciated that.
Indeed. BlueChew.com.
You're not going to give it to Carla, for heaven's sakes. Her mouth is her weapon. She doesn't need anything more than that. Frasier.
He's already had it. He's the beast.
You're good point. Good point.
We've been down that road.
We have. So yeah, I'm giving it to Woody. I don't know why. Well, we left out Coach too.
See now, Coach.
Yeah, Coach is like, give it to me. Maybe you saved my life, and Woody doesn't even come on the fucking show.
I think Coach is the best man on that show.
You know what? You're right. He's got a pure heart, but Woody was just as pure of heart. So Woody could be his Bucky, but Coach gets the super soldier serum.
Could it be Robin Colcourt? I got to steal your girlfriend, Woody. Woody.
Wow. Fucking cut, man. Wow. Or one of the Tortellis, for heaven's sake.
There you go.
For all we know. Wow. But kids, you just listened to two guys who remember way too much about an old ass fucking TV show.
And we didn't discuss Lilith. Lilith could have earned it.
You're absolutely right. Lilith, for heaven's sakes, could have.
She's a saint.
I mean, honestly, Lilith, you try to give her the super soldier serum, needle breaks in her skin.
Indeed. She's a
tough.
Skrull.
Yeah. You know what? That leaves little Freddie. Maybe give it to Frasier and Lilith's kid, Freddie. Because some people would question the wisdom about giving like a 78-year-old man the super soldier serum.
They might.
They'd be like, look, it accentuates your strength. Don't get us wrong, but it's accentuating the strength and speed of a 78-year-old man, which means when he goes real fast, he's walking about as normal as we walk.
Pretty much. And the jowls. Nobody needs that much jowl action.
Unless you could weaponize them. That was a good question. We answered 3 questions. We did news. We had a guest. We did chit chat. We had sponsors. We had a full show.
We did. I didn't think we'd get there, but 3 hours and 25 minutes later.
It took us a long time to get to that full show. But
turns out you can do anything in 3 hours and 25 minutes.
Except watch the Snyder Cut.
True.
Yes, my wife just literally came to say good night. Clearly, I'm like, oh my God, it's 11:43. She said, good night, Mark.
Good night, Jen.
That is a packed fucking show, kids. Boy, that's a lot of show. Did you come here? Did you get your money's worth? Hell yeah, you did, because you paid nothing. And we gave you so much show. Do you remember all the fucking tea that Ed Brubaker spilled? Oh my God. Oh my God. I was, you know how much it takes to cut me off and make me shut up? And I was just like,
This felt like an old school Kevin Smith Q&A where somebody asks you one question and then an hour later, another person asks another question. And then 2 hours later, everybody goes home.
Andy Leas Music wrote 1 more hour. Fuck no, dude. We gotta go, man. I'm gonna be standing on a set tomorrow, fucking 7 a.m, and be like, no, you don't understand. We were talking about which member of Cheers deserves the super.
What do you guys think?
We have had a great time, kids, and we had 2 great sponsors. Please go patronize the good folks at Blue Chew and go patronize the good folks at Native. BlueChew.com, NativeDEO.com. We thank JC for hosting us here in the unreal world. Soon he'll be hosting us again in the real world. How was your opening party?
Really good all week. Really good all week. I was surprised. People are ready to go back out.
And what's the deal? People coming in masks, they wear masks, then take it down, take a drink, put the mask on?
Yeah, if they're seated and eating, they can have it off.
Right the fuck on. There it is, man. So soon, me and Mark will be back in the bar doing the show in front of people.
No,
without masks.
At least us. You fuckers will need masks.
Yeah, everyone's wearing a goddamn mask. Hey, Mark aren't. We'll be behind 3 spit guards. You won't even be able to see us. It'll be so deep, the plastic in front of us. You'll be like, is that them?
Yeah, it'll be like inside of an aquarium. Like, why is there 9 inches of plexiglass? Well, transparent aluminum.
Because we're going back to the life, kids. Life means the chance of catching shit. Get your vaccinations.
Do it.
They're opening up the whole goddamn state out here in California. I don't know about the rest of the country, but for California, for those of you who are like, I'd like to go to Fat Man Beyond live at the Scum and Villainy Cantina right on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood, California, you can join us there, man. Like without fear. Yeah. We have no show, ladies and gentlemen, without the news gatherer, storyteller, who's always somewhere that I can never figure out the direction. That's wrong. That would be
there.
Right.
It is.
So let me replace that. So I go like that. No, that's stupid. That. There you go. Look at him. Look at him.
I feel like we're at the end of like a Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise movie where it's just, what are they doing? Credits are rolling and they're just like,
outtakes. Honestly, I like those outtakes were, I think, the first outtakes I ever saw in my life and stuff. They popularized that form. And bloopers, if you will. But that was like one of the reasons I fell in love with movies and wanted to like eventually make movies, because I was like, that looks fun. Everyone has fun when they're making movies. All they do is laugh and crack each other up. Like, what a great job that would be. No, I'm glad that we're coming across like Bert and fucking Dom. I just want to know which one I am.
Clearly you're Bert.
No.
You've got the facial hair for it.
I do, don't I?
You do.
And I'm wearing a hat like the bandit. Just like
the bandit.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for the man who brought you the show, Mr. Marc Bernardin, the guy.
My pleasure.
There it is. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Fat Man Beyond for this week. We will be back in less than a week, Saturday or Sunday. We'll let you know which one it is, man. I felt so bad because I didn't put up. Nate Gonzalez does our artwork all the time, and it's beloved. The audience loves it. They buy the shirts and stuff like that. Nate gave us this amazing like Lethal Weapon piece for this week, and I didn't put it up until like we were about to go on the show because I was shooting the thing today. So big thanks to Dark Nate Returns for that, for heaven's sakes.
Always.
All right, kids. That is Fat Man Beyond for this week. I'm Kevin Smith.
I am Marc Bernardin.
You tune in next time. Same fat time, same fat channel, smodcast.com or
youtube.com/Kevin Smith.
For a very long show, Jeff's Kid.